Millions of apparently searches on Americans' data in just the year 2021.
Millions of searches.
Yes.
I am not surprised.
Yeah, that's on the way here. Plus, the Ministry of Truth. I know you wanted to talk about this new governmental agency that has just been announced, and obviously it's getting a lot of play on social media. Some people, understandably, quite upset about it. But we'll get into the Ministry of Truth coming up as well. But first, the FBI story from nationalreview.com. The FBI conducted as many as 3 to 4 million searches of data in the United States without a warrant during just the year 2021, according to a new report.
Wow. 320 million Americans. So 1 million searches would be one for every 320 people.
So this is kind of a weird one because it is possible for law enforcement to do warrantless searches under, what is it? I want to say extravagant,
exigent
circumstances. Yeah, that's right.
You're talking about like searching a house or something for a murderer who's on the run.
If somebody they're chasing, like a murderer, runs through your house, breaks into your house, closes the door, and locks it somehow, they can break in.
They can say, "We saw him go in there." And then
and do it.
That's not what we're talking about in this particular case, though.
I know. I could have guessed that much.
The annual Statistical Transparency Report published by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence Thursday focuses on the intelligence community's use of national security authorities for surveillance under U.S. law. The information was previously gathered by the NSA, the U.S. Military Signal Intelligence Agency, but was transferred to the civilian-led FBI per the USA Freedom Act passed in 2015.
Wow. It amazes me they have the balls to name one of their acts the
Freedom Act.
Freedom Act.
And didn't they pass something after 2000 and after 9/11 on 2001?
The Patriot Act?
Yeah. I don't know if it was the Patriot Act specifically, or if it was another one of the probably many other pieces of legislations. But they basically allow. Okay, so people have to kind of understand the history. They were not allowed to do that, I think, after sometime after Martin Luther King, because of all of the basically
they tried to drive illegal King to suicide.
They did.
But they basically were doing all sorts of illegal stuff. And so they passed, I guess, a law that basically said something to the effect of they cannot different like the FBI cannot receive information from the NSA or other intelligence body, something to that effect. And I thought that changed after 9/11, 2001. I'm pretty sure it did. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of curious what the difference is between that and the 2015 legislation is.
I don't know, but I bet you freedom is an acronym for something really awful. It's got all capital letters here. So.
Yeah.
The figure represented a 260% increase from the previous year, 2020, where the FBI conducted 1.3 million searches. So going from 1.3 million to somewhere between 3 and 4 million. According to an analysis by the Wall Street Journal, more than half the data searches, 1.9 million of them, pertained to the FBI's investigations of attempts by Russian hackers to infiltrate and sabotage critical U.S. infrastructure, or at least so they claim.
Yeah.
This included the investigation of the cyber attack on the Colonial Pipeline, a 5,500-mile pipeline from Texas to New York, which was shut down allegedly by Russian hacking group DarkSide in exchange for ransom in May of 2021. The shutdown briefly prompted emergency fuel rationing measures by the Department of Energy across the Northeast United States.
And the real question is, did they ever learn their lesson? And I'm going to put money on the no, they probably didn't.
They meaning the hackers?
No, I'm talking about the government. I'm talking about the people running the fuel pipeline. Did they secure their systems?
Was it the government or the oil companies?
This is a good question, and I don't know, but it's probably so regulated that it's probably hard to tell distinguish between the two. Yeah.
Though a version of the same report has been published every year since 2014, this marks the first time that an accounting of the number of data acquisitions by the FBI has been undertaken. At a press briefing in Washington Friday, FBI official admitted that, quote, 3.4 million is certainly a large number. I'm not going to pretend that it isn't, unquote. However, other officials have admitted the data pertaining to U.S. citizens is likely lower than this figure, which also covers all data originating in the U.S. searched by the FBI under law. The report did not suggest that any of the searches, including those pertaining to U.S. citizens, was illegal. So this is all totally legitimate, according to the government. Authority, so-called, for the FBI's activity was cited as drawing from Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which was passed during the Cold War in 1978, authorizes collection of private data by, quote, non-U.S. persons, unquote.
Now, the FISA court is what they used to spy on Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
They lied to the FISA court to get warrants.
FISA, I think, is also the ones that have been approving over the last 2 decades the various different national security letters that have been going out threatening people into silence, that they can't say that they're even being searched or investigated or else they'll be punished.
Yeah. There, I've noticed there seems to be a pattern with the FBI lying to get warrants here.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, they love to lie.
Yeah.
And there's no penalty for it.
Yeah. There isn't. There really isn't.
Though their communications with U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents may be accessed as well. So again, they're authorized to collect data from non-U.S. persons, but if they're talking to somebody who's in the United States on the other side of the phone or the other side of the text message or email or whatever, then you get snatched up in the completely legal data collection. And of course, Edward Snowden was talking about this stuff back in 2013.
And if you start thinking about this for a moment, it's not. They can basically take anything they want from anybody, just about, because think about it, how the internet works. Just because you're connected, say you're in New Hampshire and you're connecting to, I don't know, California. Okay, I'm not saying that this is actually necessarily going to happen or the route that it's going to take, but if that traffic passes through Canada, they've justified seizing data based on that.
Now it's international.
Even though both the receiving party and the initiating party are in the United States. So just because your data happens to go through a route that passes through another country could also potentially get you caught up in this.
And of course, the phone companies are beholden to the government. So if they ask them to route your data through Canada, they'll almost certainly oblige.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know if there's actually something that enables them to do that somehow, like a function in the system, but it's certainly plausible, and it's certainly, I'm pretty sure we know that they have utilized this to create lists of terrorists. There's apparently a list.
It's like extraordinary rendition for data.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I believe there was a list. I don't know when it was created, but that basically includes everybody in the United States. It's a terrorist watch list.
Really?
And yeah, and the way they go about creating the terrorist watch list is something to the effect of, if you visit a foreign website, you're on this list. Now there's multiple terrorist watch lists, but it's basically as far as I can tell, it seems to be a way of basically being able to kind of target anybody they want under certain circumstances.
Section 702 has come under criticism from privacy advocates who claim it allows the federal government to spy on Americans with little oversight and due process. And then they mention here that Trump, who signed a bill reauthorizing the law in 2018, had openly questioned its use to spy on his presidential campaign, which are part of the focus of an ongoing investigation. But nonetheless,
that was the problem with Trump. He didn't have a problem with it happening. He only had a problem with it happening to him.
Right?
Yeah. So there's your story. They've been spying, and there's a good chance your communications have been caught up, and the FBI has been reviewing that. The number is 603-283-6160. You can bring up whatever's on your mind. Coming up, the Ministry of Truth is now a thing. We'll get into it.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
Brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty. When the world breakers arrive, battle will be joined, planets will shake, and war and peace will never be the same again. World Breakers. Stories from David Weber, Larry Correia, and more. Available August 3rd from BaneBooks.com.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20 mymagicmud.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 27th through July 3rd for the 6th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out for the first time in 2021. Fork Fest takes place the week after Pork Fest, but Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 27th through July 3rd. There's no better place to celebrate Independence Day than around other freedom-loving activists in the Shire. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest Forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there. Forkfest.party. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
There are basically 2 types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live, and the phones are open. If you want to join the show, you can. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here tonight, you've got Ian.
Nobody.
And Chris.
We were going to get into the Disinformation Governance Board, and we are going to do that. But also on the way, apparently, there's a new protest that might be coming into Ottawa very, very soon, called Rolling Thunder. You remember the trucker convoy, of course, the epic 3+ week-long occupation of Ottawa was in the news for quite a while earlier this year. Is this going to be similar to that? We'll do a little more digging and share that with you on the way here. And if you want to weigh in on anything, of course, the number 603-283-6160, and Free Talk Live is brought to you by Bitcoin.com. If you're ready to start learning about cryptocurrency, it's definitely not too late. Get on over to Bitcoin.com, click Get Started at the top of the page. You'll find information there about Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. You'll get some of the basics down if you spend a little bit of time watching some of the videos there over at Bitcoin.com. Just click Get Started at the top of the page. And then if you are not brand new to crypto and you want to get the latest news headlines, they've got those for you every day on their news site at news.bitcoin.com. Again, that is news.bitcoin.com. So, Nobody, you have been following this disinformation board. Now, we did talk about this, I think, maybe it was Wednesday night. It has been covered to some extent here, but we didn't get into the person who's been named to head this thing up.
Big Nanny.
Yeah.
Okay, so is this a U.S. or is this Canadian?
This is the United States.
Yeesh.
Now, according to various different news sites, they're claiming that this is all the news that sort of the mainstream news around this is acting like this has to do with the border. This has to do with the southern border. They talk about, here in this story from Huffington Post, they're going to begin focusing on misinformation aimed at migrants. But then later they admit that it's going to also prepare for Russian disinformation threats as the midterm elections near.
Which is anything that the Democrats don't like.
Yeah, they can just call it Russian. And then, so this is something that was just announced. They are calling it the Disinformation Governance Board, and they've announced that a so-called disinformation expert, Ms. Nina Jankowicz, who claims to have researched Russian misinformation tactics and online harassment, she will be heading up this board, which many are now calling the Ministry of Truth. Nobody, and what is that a reference to?
1984. The Ministry of Truth was the agency that, if, for example, your existence became inconvenient to the state, they would erase you from history. They would find every record of your existence and delete it,
and then reissue the record.
Right? Yeah, reissue it.
So if there was a news article, they would take the papers back and they'd reissue them.
And this was actually based on Stalin, who once he had one of his political opponents killed, he would have them airbrushed out of every photo.
There are pictures of that still. You can go look that up online, and they are creepy.
Yeah,
it's Photoshop quality too. They did a really good job. Of just making these people disappear.
Yeah. Now that was when the Russians were really doing some disinformation.
Yeah, right.
On their own people. In that case. So I've got a quote.
All governments focus their disinformation on their own people,
Sure.
I think.
Quote here from Ms. Jankowicz. This is the woman, again, who's heading up the disinformation board. Quote, this is from her Twitter in March of 2020. So shortly after the COVID situation started to really kind of ramp up, this is what she had to say. Anyway, long story short, I think we as a country might be too free-spirited. And then in parentheses, she says, to put it diplomatically.
That sounds anti-American.
She continues to say, to comply with social distancing recommendations unless they're forced upon us. So force away. Lock us down. People are not taking this seriously.
See, the thing is, if she liked to be choked in bed, that would be fine, but imposing it on people who don't like it is where you go wrong.
That's the person that we're talking about here. That gives you some idea of her mentality. She is a total statist, obviously. Why else would she, be appointed to this particular seat? And there's a lot of information out there that's just spilling out about her. She likes to sing. So there's a bunch of songs that have been posted where she changes the lyrics of classic musical songs like Mary Poppins and things like that to talk about disinformation instead.
Yeah, which is how I came up with Aunt Nanny or Big Nanny, sorry.
So you've been following this thing pretty closely, Nobody?
Not very closely, but
you're concerned about it though.
Obviously. I'm definitely concerned about it. They've been doing relatively well with the cooperation of big tech in suppressing the ideas they don't like. But this, I think, will bring it to a whole nother
new level.
where, you're going to see people having their doors kicked in because they believe the wrong things.
I mean, this just goes every time these stories come up. The only thing I can think of is decentralization. This is the whole reason we need decentralization. We need things like Mastodon to replace things like Twitter. We need, alternatives to Facebook. We need alternatives to Telegram, and I don't know what is it, WhatsApp, I guess. I'm trying to think some of these other.
That's Facebook's chatting that.
Right. Because ultimately all of these platforms are shadow banning, censoring people. They're doing all sorts of things to manipulate us, and then we end up in these, and unfortunately we end up in these, echo chambers too, and it's not good for anybody. And it's kind of interesting because both like libertarians, conservatives, and socialists have all been migrating to Mastodon. At least as of I think this week with what was the other story you brought in?
You talking about Elon Musk?
Yeah, with
Twitter?
the Elon Musk story.
Yeah, I suspect there are some people on the left who are leaving Twitter. At least they're claiming they're going to leave Twitter. Sure. And so likely Mastodon has seen an increase in signups in the last 7 days. But, and that comes around to another discussion we've been having throughout the week about this great man syndrome, the idea that so many are now looking to Elon Musk as the savior of free speech, and color me skeptical that that's going to be the case. But nobody.
He's only likely to affect one platform. I expect he'll affect it to the better.
Now, it is. I will say that it is probably good to have a diversification in terms of like people with different viewpoints running different platforms, because at least we get some, we get some. We're not all living in echo chambers if we're on different platforms, and some of them at least are giving us different sides.
Right now, every social media platform is, if not actually acting as if it's controlled by the Democratic National Committee.
If you want to weigh in here tonight, the number is 603-283-6160. I know, nobody, you said that the Elon story is the most important story of the week to you, and we'll get into that.
It was certainly the most exciting. But
there's more on the way here, and we'll share that. You can share your thoughts with us on Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live's video archives have been on LBRY for years. LBRY is an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol, and we're big fans of it here on Free Talk Live. In 2020, LBRY launched Odysee, a video sharing website to compete with YouTube, and it's really taking off, now with over 1 million channels, many of whom are disaffected YouTube creators. During YouTube's crackdown for not towing the government line on COVID, the Free Talk Live YouTube channel started receiving strikes and could be completely taken down at any moment. Thankfully, Odysee started offering live streaming, so we're now streaming live every night and posting our video archives permanently to Odysee. You can watch live or anytime on our Odysee channel by visiting video.freetalklive.com. If you want to go all in, download the desktop app at lbry.com, and then every video archive you watch, you'll help seed and keep it online forever. At minimum, we ask you visit video.freetalklive.com and follow us on Odysee today. video.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, D.C., I'm Benji Haya. Ukrainian officials say the capital Kiev has been hit by Russian strikes, which came as the UN Secretary-General was visiting. William Dendelo reports from Riga in Latvia.
Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba says the Russian cruise missile strike was a heinous act of barbarism that demonstrates Russia's attitude to Ukraine, Europe and the world. Thursday evening's attack came as UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres was in Kyiv for talks with President Volodymyr Zelensky. The Ukrainian president said the cruise missile attack was an effort to humiliate the UN and all it represents, and that a strong response is required. Russia's Ministry of Defense confirmed the strikes destroyed a rocket and space industry facility. On his trip to Ukraine, which came days after a visit to Moscow, Guterres said intense discussions were underway to evacuate civilians from a besieged steelworks in Mariupol. William Dendelo, Riga.
A 22-year-old former US Marine has been killed while fighting alongside Ukrainian forces. Willie Joseph Cancel is believed to be the first American citizen killed in combat with Russia. Tony Waterman has more.
According to Cancel's family, he was working for a private military contracting company when he was killed on Monday. In an interview with CNN, Cancel's mother said he had been in Ukraine since mid-March and had wanted to go because he believed in what the Ukrainians were fighting for and to prevent the war from coming to America's shores. His family says his body has not yet been recovered. The U.S. State Department has urged U.S. citizens not to travel to Ukraine to participate in the war. Cancel leaves behind a 7-month-old baby and a wife who has called him a hero. Tony Waterman, Texas.
Meanwhile, 2 British volunteers have been captured by the Russian military in Ukraine. That's according to an aid agency. Inflation in the Eurozone's reached a new record high. Energy prices and the war in Ukraine are weighing heavily on the bloc's hopes of an economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. And the identity of the Conservative Party MP accused of watching pornography in the UK's House of Commons has been revealed. Ollie Barrett has the latest from London.
Neil Parish is the Conservative MP for Tiverton and Honiton in the west of England, and we're told that he has had now a conversation with the Conservative Party's chief whip about the claims that had been made against him, and the chief whip says that Neil Parish is now reporting himself to the Standards Committee of the House of Commons for a further investigation. The Conservative Party had already referred the allegations to another independent watchdog to be looked into after 2 female Tory MPs claimed that they had seen Mr. Parish watching pornography on one occasion in the House of Commons.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FS.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. You can bring up anything you want. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We're talking about this new Disinformation Governance Board, as it's being called in political terms. But the reality is this is what a lot of people are calling the Ministry of Truth. And nobody, you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's basically going to be the agency that the government uses to push its lies.
Yet calling anything that's contrary to those lies disinformation, and using, as you pointed out, their big tech buddies like Facebook, for instance, to assist them, as they've been doing, by the way, for years now. Remember, we shared a story that revealed that Facebook was tied in with the Trump administration at the very beginning of 2020, and they had an agreement where Facebook was giving the government millions of dollars in free advertising to promote the CDC's positions on whatever. In this case, it ended up being COVID-19, and they were just handing them all of this, free advertising money that they could just use to pimp their propaganda.
And just about everything the government said was a lie.
Yep, and then of course, subsequent to that, Facebook and Twitter and all these other centralized platforms were being utilized by the state. Whether we're talking about Trump or Biden, doesn't matter. The CDC still the same, right? Like the Fauci, we pointed out the other night, he's been in that position since 1984.
Wow.
So, I mean, he's
my whole life.
Yeah, you can change out all of the presidents, but you don't change the bureaucrats hardly ever. And so they went to Facebook and Twitter and these, as you mentioned, centralized platforms, Chris, and they were all doing the government's bidding, and they started labeling anything that wasn't in line with the state. Google, of course, with YouTube doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, Google was interesting because they supposedly did it for even U.S. outlets, but if you look at the wording, it's different for U.S. versus Russian versus other favorable countries' media.
Oh, you're talking about the government
outlets.
media like RT?
Yeah, right. Like they labeled Russia something like Russian government propaganda, whereas the U.S. outlets that were U.S. funded,
government.
Yeah, they worded it differently, where it's like, oh, it doesn't scare you, but with the Russians, it's worded to scare you.
Yeah, and then, of course, they were cracking down on individual channels. Anyone that would say things that were contrary to the official government line on COVID would be given a strike and or had their channel just deleted entirely. It happened to us.
And there's shadow banning, too.
Sure.
Yeah. So shadow banning is where you're not like officially kicked off, but you won't come up in search results,
right?
Or
so you're
you won't
hard
come
to
up
find,
very high in search results.
Yeah.
You'll be at the very, very bottom,
even if you're the most relevant search result.
Right.
So we saw all this happening, and this was without the misinformation or the Disinfo Governance Board, aka Ministry of Truth. So this thing's brand new. It was just created this week, and of course, there's a bunch of people on the right wing who are bemoaning this because they're not in charge of it. Of course,
as soon as Trump got a hold of it, they'd be delighted.
Exactly. But they want to somehow defund this and eliminate the position, and it's like, well, how are you going to do that?
Yeah, it's
not in charge.
It's so interesting how both sides are basically for the same things, even if they want to do something slightly different with each. And often there's a lot of overlap too with what they want to do anyway.
Right. The Republicans are in favor of quote unquote free speech right now because they're not in charge.
Right.
And it's so obvious to us, at least.
And it's interesting because it's not neither Republicans nor Democrats are really in favor of free speech. What they're in favor is their speech.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you would find that out when and if the Republicans take control of Washington, D.C., and then all of a sudden they want to crack down on the speech of the Democrats in that particular case.
Yeah.
So we know how it works, but a lot of people are still getting fooled by this, two-party dog and pony show. And if you want to weigh in, you can join us at 603-283-6160. But you were touching on the idea of decentralization, Chris, and you felt like that needed to be defined a little bit better?
I don't think people actually know what decentralization is, or often it's actually more federation than decentralization. Decentralization is effectively where everybody sort of partakes and there's no central thing to attack. Federation is very similar, except that there are still potentially places to attack. It's just you're only going to take out a portion of that network. So if you, for example, if you target
Would
Facebook,
polycentric be another word for that? Multiple centers?
Yeah, that might be a good way to describe it. So you might have 500 different sort of Facebooks, but they're all interconnected. So you might be able to take out one of them, but you won't necessarily be able to take out all. And the reason this is important for from a censorship perspective or a freedom of speech perspective is that even if, say, one server that you might sign up with wants to, or not that you signed up with, but maybe you're not signed up with, presumably, wants to censor you, or they want to censor your server, that's not going to necessarily affect your ability to, get your message out there to people on other servers that are signed up with other servers. So it diminishes the ability of censorship to effectively work.
Right. Actually, we just got on social.freetalklive.com, which is a Mastodon instance, one of God knows how many thousands of them. I mean, we're not talking about 500. There's thousands of Mastodons.
Yeah, I want to say there's like 5,000 or 8,000, something like that.
Yeah, and a lot of them are foreign language or whatever, but we actually got our first reported post today after being around for more than a year. And what was interesting was the reported post was regarding somebody on our server, but it came from another Mastodon, which I didn't realize was a thing. So apparently somebody on some other server entirely can send a report to our admins and complain about what one of our users is doing, which I wish we could just turn that off entirely, but it is there, and we ignored that report.
What did they say? What was the speech complained about?
Oh, I'd have to pull it up. I don't have it in front of me. It didn't seem like anything worth our time to really be concerned with. So I just thought it was interesting. I didn't realize that that was a thing where somebody else who wasn't even part of your user base, just somebody on the Fediverse, didn't like something that somebody on our server said, so we got the report about that.
Well, it's always been that way. Back in the day, I don't know if people still monitor it, but for any internet site, you could send an email to abuse@whatever.com, and it would go to the to whoever administered that site to look into it. And it was useful for some things. If there was a spammer, it was useful to be able to report that, and some people would remove them or find a way to stop them.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of a futile. It's a futile, especially with the I hate to say this, but modern internet. That system I don't think really works. But yeah.
Okay, I did find it. I figured, maybe one of the benefits of these reports coming in, whenever they come in, there might be some that are kind of fun to see what people are complaining about coming from our server. Because again, it's decentralized, meaning that the person on this other server, which was mastodon.online, not our server, whoever it was that reported this is, and I don't even know if it says who it was. I think it just says it came from that server. So we don't even know who on that server reported this particular post, but they claim that this person is an American fascist/Nazi user who pushes extremist rhetoric through boosts while avoiding making objectionable posts themselves. And then they select a post that is one example of direct propaganda, also a, quote, freeze peach, unquote, type of individual. And then,
so they're literally reporting them for supporting free speech.
The funny thing about Mastodon is it's not all libertarians. There are conservatives. There are, as in this case, probably some sort of lefty kind of socialist individual
who wrote the report.
Yeah, and this is how you end up with this really interesting, I don't know, scenario where you have everybody on Mastodon. It's not one-sided, which really makes it great from not living in a bubble.
Did they ever cut Gab off from the Fediverse, though?
I think Gab cut itself off, but I don't think it's entirely cut off anyway.
There's more coming up here in moments. I'll actually share the content of the alleged offensive post here, since we do have it handy, and you guys can see what you think about it. The number is 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
Uncovering the secrets and exposing the lies. That's what the readers of freedomsphoenix.com get every day. freedomsphoenix.com, constantly providing the information, the real news about government policies, and the real relationship we all have with the coercive government. The real condition of the economy, innovations in technology, breakthroughs in energy, health, and computer science. Learn the truth well before it's admitted to in the lamestream media. The corporate media, nothing more than distributors of government propaganda, but now there's an alternative. freedomsphoenix.com. Constant news updates on the issues that affect your life in the most important ways. With liberty and property under constant attack, freedomsphoenix.com provides the understanding behind the propaganda, and it encourages the participation of its readers. Go to freedomsphoenix.com. That's freedoms with an S, phoenix.com. freedomsphoenix.com. The revolution between the ears has already happened.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here, and I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. The phones are open here, and you can join us. Bring up whatever you want to discuss. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And Free Talk Live, by the way, is brought to you by Freedom's Phoenix. It's your source for all news, economic news, government overreach, insane government spending, and more. You can get today's headlines all in one place, and from a fresh libertarian perspective, you can find this and more at freedomsphoenix.com. That's freedoms with an S, phoenix.com. So we're talking about decentralization here, the idea of, well, getting away from one center or just a few of them, like social media platforms, mega big tech, Facebook, Twitter. Of course, those are the two biggies. But now TikTok is, of course, becoming incredibly popular amongst younger people. Trying to get people off of those platforms is a challenge.
TikTok is actually a funny one because that's a Chinese operation.
It is.
And you've got people in the U.S. complaining that they're not censoring enough.
Yeah, that's true.
It's crazy.
The United States is certainly not a freedom-loving place in a lot of ways, and that's one of the reasons why we need to get out of it as quickly as possible via secession, peaceful secession.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny how we've all been, I feel like we've all been brainwashed in, government schools about, America being like free, and it's like
not so.
Yeah, if you start listening like to what people are saying, it certainly doesn't sound free, doesn't look free. When you're asking for more censorship than what China is already implementing on a Chinese controlled platform, like really? You really are you're going to call America free? I don't know.
So you were talking about, Chris, getting people to get off of those centralized platforms and start adopting newer technology that in many cases isn't that new. It's been around. Mastodon's been around for more than half a decade, I think, at this point.
Yeah, it existed prior under a different name. I think it was Identica.ca or something like that. But yeah, it's been around a while, but it's definitely increased, I think, and expanded in terms of its user base and its popularity in recent years. I mean, you've seen the conservatives kind of jump on board. You've seen the libertarians,
like Gab, for instance.
You've seen the libertarians
now,
jump on board.
Social,
and Truth,
right?
Yep. And
by the way, did you hear that Trump has finally posted to Truth Social?
Yeah, I did hear that. Which he's now posted twice to it.
Do you think that had anything to do with the fact that Elon Musk bought Twitter?
I don't know. I just
because it's awfully coincidental, isn't it? He started Truth Social, his site, 2 months ago, and he posted on day one to his account saying, "Your favorite president is coming soon," and then posted nothing else until like yesterday. And it just seems like awfully coincidental that the same week that Elon Musk buys Twitter or announces that they're going to close the deal, that all of a sudden Trump acts like, "Oh yeah, I was always going to wait 2 months before I made my second post on my own platform." They acted like this was always the plan, that Trump was always going to come in right before the month of May, and it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, it's he could have done a lot more to promote Truth Social.
Like use the actual platform.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I don't know, once a day.
think.
Once a day? I mean, for a guy that used to post like 10 times a day to Twitter, to ask him to go and post once a day to his own platform, I wouldn't think would be asking too much.
And the crazy thing is, like, he doesn't even actually have to post himself, right?
He can
like,
have somebody do it
right.
for him.
It's not like he doesn't have the money for it.
He's got people.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to so much talk about Truth Social, but that was an example of another Mastodon-based platform.
Yeah.
And, of course, the Mastodon people that program Mastodon weren't happy to find out that Trump had adopted it, which is sort of the downside to Mastodon, is that they are programmed by some what appear to be socialists in Germany and France.
It's, I don't know what the makeup is, but oftentimes these...
Well, they're based in France and Germany, aren't they?
Well, yeah, the thing is that there's people all around the world. I don't know specifically about Mastodon. I do know that I think like one of the founders is definitely more a left-leaning individual.
Yeah. Well, they threatened to sue Donald Trump.
Yeah. Anyway,
I think that when they first launched the site, they didn't include the GPL notice or something like that, or one of the licensing statements on their site, and they threatened to sue them.
Yeah, that kind of made me smile, only because nobody ever sues over the GPL violations, and there's actually like two entities, maybe three technically, that actually bring GPL lawsuits.
One, GPL stands for what?
General. What is it?
I want to say
license.
General public license.
Yeah.
Okay. It's an open source thing, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's the GNU public license is actually what it is.
Basically, there's only three organizations that ever really sue. One is the Software Freedom Conservancy. That's like kind of one of the things they do, main things they do. They don't actually they actually try to avoid suing. They don't like to sue, but it's kind of like a last resort thing. And then there's the Free Software Foundation. Again, I don't even know that they really brought that many lawsuits over the years. And then there's like one party that's kind of using it in a more of a malicious manner. But it's really kind of, that was really an interesting threat, I guess, at least. Did they actually sue, or I think it was just a threat, right?
You talking about in the Truth Social case?
Yeah.
No, they sent a legal letter or whatever from their attorneys, and it got the Truth Social to put somewhere on their website that they are a Mastodon-based platform.
Gotcha.
So they did put whatever it is they needed to put on there.
Yeah, I'm not even sure. So I don't. Is it the AGPL license? I'm trying to think what the license actually is. Is it just GPL? Because
GPL and LGPL.
Yeah, I'm just the reason I'm thinking is because if it's under the GPL license, it wouldn't require you, just because you're using the code, to release code. That's why I'm thinking it must not be the GPL.
Yeah, you've got a point there. Well, doesn't the GPL 3 change that?
No.
The one that Linus Torvalds said flew in the face of everything?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
It doesn't. It does actually have a component in there that was like, it allows you to kind of like change the terms, and it potentially do so in a way that's like against the user's interests, which is really weird. I don't know. But that wasn't the reason that Linus was, against it or anything.
I actually modified the terms of the I didn't use GPL. I used the I think I used the Perl license.
I think we're getting a little too into
it's definitely getting too into this.
So basically, I put language in it that said if your organization is primarily based on theft, including taxation, you are not authorized to use this software.
Which is kind of funny because I don't know this for sure, but it's probably a copyright violation to modify the terms, because the actual license is not under the same license effectively that's distributed.
They copyrighted
let them
a
sue
license?
me.
Well, yeah, I mean,
that's confusing.
Yeah, it is.
Interestingly, I was looking here at the truthsocial.com site, and they have a page where they include a warrant canary, which I did not expect to see on a Trump site.
Kind of interesting.
But for listeners that don't know, a warrant canary is basically a protection, sort of a way to alert your users that you've been approached by law enforcement, even though law enforcement may have a warrant, which I referenced earlier with a FISA court, where they give you a they give you a threat, a gag order. They basically say, we're going to serve you with this notice. You have to do A, B, or C, turn over data to us or whatever, and you can't tell anyone you're doing it. But what they can't tell you can't do is remove a message from your website that says you have not been approached by law enforcement. So that's not technically a communication. And so they have on their warrant canary says this: as of February 21st, 2022, Truth Social has not been served with a secret government subpoena, such as a subpoena served under 18 U.S.C. blah, blah, blah of the Patriot Act. Neither has Truth Social turned over or weakened any encryption or authentication keys for its services or users. Truth Social has not knowingly installed any law enforcement software or hardware within its infrastructure or shared its network traffic with governmental entities. So that's their warrant canary. So the idea being, if they were to receive one of these government threats, they would then go in and edit the warrant canary to where they're not saying they've been threatened.
Actually, even editing the warrant canary can be a violation.
Really?
So what would happen probably if they were served with one of these things is the date on it would stop changing.
Well, the date is February 21st, 2022 on this document, and it is now April.
It also is something that's just worth pointing out that they may actually be prohibited legally depending on how it unfolds. Like under normal circumstances, that the warrant canary may work, but there could be circumstances where it won't work because there are certain gag orders that would prevent you from
even editing the website
or not editing the website.
Oh,
wow.
See, I didn't think they could force you to take action. I mean, well, of course they can.
It's kind of like
guns.
we don't know how many warrants were issued or subpoenas were issued against like Microsoft because they're national security. So
Project
they give you a range.
Veratus got a national security letter sent to Microsoft.
More coming up. Free Talk Live. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone? You forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection. You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, D.C., I'm Benji Haya. Ukrainian officials say the capital Kiev has been hit by Russian strikes, which came as the UN Secretary-General was visiting. William Dendelo reports from Riga in Latvia.
Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba says the Russian cruise missile strike was a heinous act of barbarism that demonstrates Russia's attitude to Ukraine, Europe and the world. Thursday evening's attack came as UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres was in Kyiv for talks with President Volodymyr Zelensky. The Ukrainian president said the cruise missile attack was an effort to humiliate the UN and all it represents, and that a strong response is required. Russia's Ministry of Defense confirmed the strikes destroyed a rocket and space industry facility. On his trip to Ukraine, which came days after a visit to Moscow, Guterres said intense discussions were underway to evacuate civilians from a besieged steelworks in Mariupol. William Denzelo, Riga.
A 22-year-old former US Marine has been killed while fighting alongside Ukrainian forces. Willie Joseph Cancel is believed to be the first American citizen killed in combat with Russia. Tony Waterman has more.
According to Cancel's family, he was working for a private military contracting company when he was killed on Monday. In an interview with CNN, Cancel's mother said he had been in Ukraine since mid-March and had wanted to go because he believed in what the Ukrainians were fighting for and to prevent the war from coming to America's shores. His family says his body has not yet been recovered. The U.S. State Department has urged U.S. citizens not to travel to Ukraine to participate in the war. Cancel leaves behind a 7-month-old baby and a wife who has called him a hero. Tony Waterman, Texas.
Meanwhile, 2 British volunteers have been captured by the Russian military in Ukraine. That's according to an aid agency. Inflation in the Eurozone's reached a new record high. Energy prices and the war in Ukraine are weighing heavily on the bloc's hopes of an economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. And the identity of the Conservative Party MP accused of watching pornography in the UK's House of Commons has been revealed. Ollie Barrett has the latest from London.
Neil Parish is the Conservative MP for Tiverton and Honiton in the west of England, and we're told that he has had now a conversation with the Conservative Party's chief whip about the claims that had been made against him, and the chief whip says that Neil Parish is now reporting himself to the Standards Committee of the House of Commons for a further investigation. The Conservative Party had already referred the allegations to another independent watchdog to be looked into after 2 female Tory MPs claimed that they had seen Mr. Parish watching pornography on one occasion in the House of Commons.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. As we head into the 3rd month of Russia's war on Ukraine, there's every indication that it is going to become a long, grinding conflict. But even if it is contained to Ukraine itself and does not drag NATO into direct conflict with Moscow, the Putin regime is now referring to the conflict as a proxy war between Russia and the United States. That was the phrase that Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov used earlier this week, and Foreign Affairs analyst Tim Marshall thinks that on this occasion, Vladimir Putin's top foreign affairs advisor is right.
He's not talking about a nuclear war. He's warning that you can't rule that out. It's because they're rattled. They saw the 2 American secretaries of state, Defense and the State Department, show up in Kyiv over the weekend and openly say what they're going to be giving the Ukrainians. They even listed the weapons. The Americans, I think, have made the calculation that they can shift this crisis from what was simply trying to manage it, damage limitation on the Ukrainian side, into a strategic opportunity to really inflict damage on the Russians themselves. So it is a proxy war, I'm afraid.
Russia's Ministry of Education says children will be taught about the justification for the war when they return to Russia's classrooms for a new academic year in September, suggesting the Kremlin thinks the conflict will still be underway then. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Let's return to our top stories. Ukrainian officials have described a cruise missile attack on the capital Kiev as a heinous act. A 22-year-old former US Marine has been killed while fighting alongside Ukrainian forces. And inflation in the Eurozone has reached a record high, with energy prices and the war in Ukraine weighing heavily on the bloc's hopes of an economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. That's the latest feature story news. I'm Benji Haya in Washington.
Buying a burger might start taking a bite out of your wallet. Meat prices skyrocketed this week after the place that makes the meat revealed that the cow smashing machine is all beefed up.
This machine has beef way up in it. The basher, the meat collector, even the main meat hole, all of it. Lousy with beef.
The cow smashing machine is an integral part of the meat making process, taking whole big cows into one end with all different meats falling out the other. Supermarket chains warn that unless we start smashing cows again soon, we could face a serious beef shortage. The beef industry is working hard to unclog the cow smasher, but says it could take several days or even weeks to scoop all the beef that's crammed up in there. Until it's fixed, meat-hungry Americans can take solace in the fact that the chicken grinder is working at full capacity, just completely tearing tearing up all those chickens, and the pig machine is porking out hardcore. Up next, bluesmen find a rising trend of their babies done leaving on that their old devil train.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. You can join us here and share your thoughts. 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here in the studio tonight, you've got Ian. Oh, sorry, nobody. Try that again.
Nobody.
Getting censored again, huh?
Volume.
Now it's
And
working.
Chris.
Yep, we'll take your calls about whatever you want to discuss. And coming up, the latest from Shanghai on a lockdown that has lasted now for something around the number of 50 days at this point.
Wow, they really got shanghaied.
Sure did. And so we'll play a little bit of horrifying audio from Shanghai, what it sounds like at nighttime there, coming up in just a moment, and give you an update on what's been happening.
Although I gotta say, they're kind of wimpy. I mean, I've done 6 months or a year, and well, I did a year one time and 6 months another time. I wasn't screaming out the window.
Yeah, I mean, I get where you're coming from, but on the other hand, they actually fed you 3 times a day pretty consistently, right?
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. They were.
Here you literally have 25 million people who are locked down in what is the 3rd most populous city on the planet.
Wait, they haven't gotten food in a month?
No. They're getting quote-unquote food when they can get it from the government.
Wow.
And so try to imagine what government...
We all know how governments are about providing food.
I can only imagine the logistics of all of that, too.
Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit more about that coming up here. Obviously, the government runs the jail here, but they have a private company handle the kitchen.
Yeah.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Sodexo, the very same company that was doing the college kitchen for a while.
No, wow.
Yeah. Let's get
It wasn't as good as the college kitchen, though, I gotta say.
Is that because the prisoners were working it or something?
No, it wasn't that bad, though, honestly.
It wasn't that bad.
Wasn't that bad.
It wasn't that bad.
Let's go to TJ the Spy. He's on the line on our SIP line at sip.freetalklive.com if you want to learn more about how to connect to that. Normally, we just give you our phone number, but there is one line dedicated just to SIP calls, sip.freetalklive.com. Go ahead, TJ.
Hey, Chris, nobody, Ian. I just was calling to talk about a book I got from Amazon. It's called Mastering Bitcoin by Andreas Antonopoulos, 2nd edition.
Good book.
I know
I've
that
read
you're
it.
friends with Andreas, but it's a really good book, and I recommend it to anybody who's a technical person who wants to know how Bitcoin works under the hood. It's very detailed and very well written.
Oh, it's a technical book. That's interesting because whenever I think of Andreas Antonopoulos, I think of a guy who can communicate like complex ideas in simple terms, and I don't think of him as a technical writer.
Well, he is a very good technical writer, and he covers the elliptic curve digital signature algorithm, key recovery, hierarchical determination, HD
So
wallets.
would you say this is a book for mathematicians to read?
Mathematicians and computer programmers, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But so how does it feel to be down to the crypto too? Somebody asked me what happened to Colleen. Did she just drop out, or did they dismiss all the charges, or what happened there?
Charges have been dismissed against Colleen, and I don't know all the details as far as why that happened. So
all right. Well, hopefully that's good news.
That's good news for her.
You know what's more interesting is that they at least, I don't know if they can add people to it at this point.
I don't think they can at this point.
Yeah, so that's also good news.
Yeah, they've brought all the charges they're going to bring for this particular circumstance. That's not to say they couldn't bring completely different charges for completely different things against completely different people at this point.
And that is still always a concern.
Yeah.
But
they can always do that.
Yeah, but at least, whatever, people are currently being charged, that appears to be it at this point.
This particular situation over the last several years is locked down as far as further charges. You're referring to the Crypto 6 situation, which you can go to thecrypto6.com and you can learn more about that. The various different raids that were conducted against our homes. Many of the hosts of this show, including Nobody, had their doors and their windows smashed in.
They were really thorough on this one, Ian. They really have a hard on for you because, as I said, like we talk occasionally on the radio, but we're not like chum. We don't hang out on a regular basis, and we and James got us subpoenaed, so it's they're uncovering all leaves, no stone left unturned. So.
Yeah, they really want to get me, and they're going to do their best.
It was pretty clear in 2016. I mean, the first time. Well, I shouldn't say the first time they raided, but the first time. At least
that was the first time the federal government raided. The local police raided this house.
Fair enough.
Our old tenants were allegedly growing marijuana next door.
Not the first time the FBI targeted, but the first time the FBI raided.
Oh yeah, the FBI has been targeting Free Staters in Keene since as far back as 2005. They tried to put nobody in prison for 80 years for selling cannabis and refusing to wear a wire.
And thank you, nobody, for doing that. I know you won the Harrison Drug Dealer of the Year award way back when, but I appreciate your service. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
All right, TJ, was that all you wanted to say? You wanted to give us a book review?
Book recommendation and find out what happened to the Crypto 2.
I think Crypto Duo is a little better than Crypto 2. I don't know if
I don't think it should change, honestly.
It should still be Crypto 6?
Yeah, ultimately...
I'm still with you in spirit.
Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think it still needs to be the Crypto 6. I've talked to this a little about with other people, and I think it's pretty much people think Crypto 6...
Well, they did ruin 6 people's lives. I mean, that is absolutely what they've done. Even if Ari and I walk away with a complete not guilty, which of course would be the ideal situation after going to a jury, nobody's now a felon federal level for the rest of his life. Renee and Andy also federal felons. They've never harmed another person. There was never any victim. Now they've come out with a sheet that is publicly released, so I can say this. They've come out with a list of the victims, the quote-unquote victims in this case.
It's pretty funny.
And it's bank after bank after credit union after credit union after bank. I mean, we're talking about Bank of America, J.P. Morgan, but yet they can't point to a single dollar that those banks actually lost.
And this is funny.
So basically, the people who have been victimizing the whole world are supposedly the victims of this.
The hearing, nobody's hearing was I don't want. Funny is not quite the right word to use, but it was just humorous to hear the prosecution say they're not requesting damages, I believe it was, because there was no monetary loss by the victim.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so where's the crime here?
Yeah.
Well, that's all I have to
say.
Thanks, TJ.
You
guys have a good one.
Appreciate it, man. That's TJ the Spy calling us from wherever he is. All right, so
calling us from an undisclosed location.
Yeah, so I'm going to disclose this location. It's somewhere in Shanghai. This is what it might sound like tonight. This was recorded some number of nights ago, but we've seen more than one. And apparently the woman in that particular scream says, "Give me back my freedom." That's a translation. As she's screaming out the window. This is video of just nighttime. It's nighttime in Shanghai. There's a tremendous clatter of noise coming because people are banging on pots and pans. Since this video's come out, we've seen some footage of people actually going into the streets. So not everyone is staying inside. They've been some have gone into the streets and have had clashes with the police there.
If only they had guns.
Yeah.
This is why America must never, ever give up its firearms.
Well, of course, many Americans voluntarily went indoors into their own homes. In this case, many of the Chinese did as well. Because they've been trained over generations to be obedient to the state. But once the food starts running low, people are going to change their behavior. People are going to be more likely to take some risks that they otherwise wouldn't take. And so I just wanted to kind of talk about what's been going on, because we did do a lengthy show on a Saturday night a couple weeks ago where we got into like a lot of posts and information from people who are actually in Shanghai, have been writing about it, about how the government delivers food on a scheduled basis once a day. Supposedly, only 1 or 2 people from each apartment building are authorized to go and actually pick up the food. Then they have to deliver it to the rest of the apartment building, all while wearing full body suits, of course. There's more coming up here in moments. We'll talk more about what's happening in Shanghai. It's just absolutely insane, and
I don't understand. Is the disease different there?
No.
Because nobody's dying here.
No. It is still COVID, which no one's dying from.
No healthy people are dying.
Few people
at least.
are dying. There's more coming up here. You can join us 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
When Monster Hunter International discovers one of Isaac Newton's wardstones being auctioned off, they decide to steal it and use it to destroy the Chaos God once and for all. But a mysterious thief upends their plan, and it soon becomes a race against time as something much older and infinitely more evil awakens in the jungles of South America. Monster Hunter Bloodlines by New York Times bestselling author Larry Correia and Baen Books. Visit monsterhunternation.com for more.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless free market non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. The phones are open here. You can join us. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. In the studio here tonight, you've got Ian.
Nobody.
And Chris.
We are talking about the latest out of Shanghai, where it is, for some people, some of the 25 million residents, something around day number 45 of lockdown. Some of them are going on day 30, depending on what parts of the city were locked down before others.
I can't figure out what the hell the government is trying to do there. Is it just some sadistic experiment to see how much people will take?
Well, I mean, that's basically what the last 2 years have been everywhere, and they're just going further than anywhere else. They have what they call a quote-unquote zero COVID policy.
Wow.
So their goal is to have no COVID cases amongst the general population and to take all COVID cases and put them into quarantine centers, of which they have built many.
I mean, at what cost, though?
Well, I think just to provide the proper motivation, they should, whack a couple of dozen government officials for every day that COVID continues to exist.
I mean, I'm trying to think, does China still have, no, it doesn't have its one-child policy. It's like, I'm just thinking, aren't they trying to kill off their population because it's growing too fast?
Well, there's definitely people that are jumping off of buildings.
Yeah.
And killing themselves because of this.
There is a fundamental cost when you prevent emergency services from getting to people and you shut down to the degree that China is shutting down. You're going to have probably increased deaths, even if it's not from COVID.
Speaking of emergency services being prevented from getting to people, have you guys seen the footage of the huge gates, metal grated gates that have been put up around apartment buildings?
Yes.
No.
So this something that started coming out in the last week is video. Of course, there's all these people are in their apartments, so they still have their phones and such. They can lean out the window and take video of whatever it is that's going on in the streets. And so there's plenty of video of nighttime operations where these full body-suited, hazmat-suited men show up with a truck, and on the back of the truck is a huge stack of metal gates, and then they put these things together. It's the same stuff that they were using in Ottawa, actually, during the Freedom Convoy.
Oh, wow.
At the end of the Freedom Convoy, when the crackdown came, when all the cops came into Ottawa from everywhere, what they did was at nighttime, or towards the evening, they would erect these metal grate things, and they'd put their maybe 8 to 10 feet tall, so usually plenty taller than the average person.
Right.
And they would move them into a street where they wanted to prevent people from coming closer to Parliament. And now we're seeing the exact same things, except in China, they're green. And again, taller than the average person. They're putting them around the entrances to the apartment complexes. So I saw an image of one of these completed, right? So after they'd finished putting them up, there was a man who had come out the apartment complex door and was receiving what appears to be a COVID test from some of these suited men that were outside. But he was behind this gate and kind of just, saying, ah, and then the men were putting whatever it was they were putting into his mouth, whatever swab, etc. But the gate was closed, so he could not move further than just barely beyond the front doors of this apartment complex. And they've been doing this all over the city to prevent people from coming in and getting out. And so, of course, the question somebody asked was, well, what happens when the apartment complex catches fire?
Yeah.
You literally got a gate preventing you from leaving your apartment complex through the normal means. I mean, you could always jump, but you can't get out the normal front door. And so how do the emergency responders, presuming there are any, respond in any kind of decent manner to these situations? You're just going to die. So that's what's happening.
That's the epitome of communism right there.
Right. All for zero COVID.
And this is something I'm usually thinking about this. I'm thinking about it in the United States, but the cost, people don't understand the numbers, and often we get quoted numbers that sound outrageous, but it's so out of context. And this is probably another great example, but it's China this time, right? It's what is the cost? How many people are dying, not as a result of COVID, but more people are probably dying as a result of the actions that they're taking from other things, not COVID, as a result.
Literally, people are jumping off of buildings and killing themselves because of their despondency.
I'm not even thinking of people committing suicide. I'm thinking of people having heart attacks,
That
people,
too.
all sorts of other things that normally would be addressed.
Yeah, they
but
were showing
aren't being addressed
And
because
we had a lot of that
this
here too.
restriction.
People who needed cancer care,
they couldn't get it.
Yeah, that's
couldn't
true.
get it.
Yeah,
people who needed minor but life-saving surgery couldn't get it.
And this just goes to demonstrate, I think, how similar really, governments are around the world. It's
sure.
I mean, yes, it may be to a different degree in China,
Difference in degrees.
but they're using the same tactics, and it's hurting people.
Well, their behavior is always characterized by a depraved indifference toward human life.
Yep. Sounds about right.
And people go along with it. I mean, somebody was arguing about whether January 6th was worse than the Monica Lewinsky scandal, and I popped in and I said, well, you're talking about taking an unauthorized tour of a building versus a consensual blowjob. Do you happen to remember that the United States murdered 1 million people in Iraq for nothing?
Oh, 500,000 kids dying was totally worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, they probably killed well over 1 million over the years.
Sure. Don Weiland is a writer for The Economist, and I didn't think I would see this article there because generally The Economist is considered sort of part of the system. But he writes from Shanghai. He says, I never imagined living through history could be this boring. At the end of March, the Chinese government responded to an outbreak of the Omicron variant in Shanghai by embarking on the largest...
And Omicron is the one who kills nobody, but... And the thing about it is it provides very good natural immunity. So it's like nature's vaccine.
So they embarked on the largest citywide lockdown in history. Most of Shanghai's 25 million residents are shut in their homes or sleeping on the floor of their workplaces. Police cars idle down boulevards that were once bustling thoroughfares. Occasionally, buses full of masked passengers, ostensibly heading to vast, makeshift COVID hospitals on the outskirts of the city, zip past on the motorway below. I moved to Shanghai at the beginning of March. Trapped inside my hotel room, it's hard to tell what's going on in the smoggy Ghostopolis. In this mass experiment, one in which government disclosures are incomplete or deceptive, any small bit of information that you can verify with your own eyes becomes vital. Monitoring the number of cars on the road or the thickness of the haze of pollution against the skyline become vital, if imperfect, gauges of human traffic and economic activity. A government announcement at one point claimed that nearly half the population of the city had been set free. He says this seems implausible. At the same time, the media reported that whole communities were being hauled out of Shanghai to give authorities time to, quote, sanitize, unquote, specific areas, which he says is more likely. Residents of Shanghai have been pushed into an inner world, largely playing out on smartphone screens. We'll talk about more what it's like to be someone in Shanghai who, sadly, apparently arrived right before the lockdown started. There's more coming up here in moments. It's Free Talk Live.
Because we are smothering in spam, please do not reply to all when you can instead reply. I was recently among over 100 invited to a corporate reunion. It's always a warm affair, and that's the problem. Enthusiasm for our upcoming get-together caused many recipients to RSVP the organizer with a cheery reply to all. I can't wait. Then others piled on with a reply to all to that. Then the I'm out of my office now autoresponders joined in. So I replied to all, asking that we all reply only to the organizer. Hey, at least I tried. One invitee, apparently retired, shot back, point taken, but I really like seeing the responses since they're so positive. Smiley face. This better be an open bar. From survivalspeech.com, I'm Holland Cook.
From Feature Story News in Washington, D.C., I'm Benji Haya. Ukrainian officials say the capital Kiev has been hit by Russian strikes, which came as the UN Secretary-General was visiting. William Dendelo reports from Riga in Latvia.
Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba says the Russian cruise missile strike was a heinous act of barbarism that demonstrates Russia's attitude to Ukraine, Europe and the world. Thursday evening's attack came as UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres was in Kyiv for talks with President Volodymyr Zelensky. The Ukrainian president said the cruise missile attack was an effort to humiliate the UN and all it represents, and that a strong response is required. Russia's Ministry of Defense confirmed the strikes destroyed a rocket and space industry facility. On his trip to Ukraine, which came days after a visit to Moscow, Guterres said intense discussions were underway to evacuate civilians from a besieged steelworks in Mariupol. William Denzelo, Riga.
A 22-year-old former US Marine has been killed while fighting alongside Ukrainian forces. Willie Joseph Cancel is believed to be the first American citizen killed in combat with Russia. Tony Waterman has more.
According to Cancel's family, he was working for a private military contracting company when he was killed on Monday. In an interview with CNN, Cancel's mother said he had been in Ukraine since mid-March and had wanted to go because he believed in what the Ukrainians were fighting for and to prevent the war from coming to America's shores. His family says his body has not yet been recovered. The U.S. State Department has urged U.S. citizens not to travel to Ukraine to participate in the war. Cancel leaves behind a 7-month-old baby and a wife who has called him a hero. Tony Waterman, Texas.
Meanwhile, 2 British volunteers have been captured by the Russian military in Ukraine. That's according to an aid agency. Inflation in the Eurozone's reached a new record high. Energy prices and the war in Ukraine are weighing heavily on the bloc's hopes of an economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. And the identity of the Conservative Party MP accused of watching pornography in the UK's House of Commons has been revealed. Ollie Barrett has the latest from London.
Neil Parish is the Conservative MP for Tiverton and Honiton in the west of England, and we're told that he has had now a conversation with the Conservative Party's chief whip about the claims that had been made against him, and the chief whip says that Neil Parish is now reporting himself to the Standards Committee of the House of Commons for a further investigation. The Conservative Party had already referred the allegations to another independent watchdog to be looked into after 2 female Tory MPs claimed that they had seen Mr. Parish watching pornography on one occasion in the House of Commons.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FS.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. I will share on our social media site, social.freetalklive.com, to the @FTL profile, the link to a very, very busy Twitter page. It is called Northrop Gundam, and the @ handle for that person is @Gundam Northrop, but I'll go ahead and share a link over there in a little bit so you can see it for yourself. This guy just keeps on all day long retweeting various different videos that are allegedly taken in the streets of Shanghai, of different things, in most cases horrible things that are going on. One example is just shared a couple hours ago, a 30-second video of Chinese agents that have forced a woman onto the ground to pry her mouth open and force her to take a COVID test, because if you aren't aware of this, the residents are expected to test for COVID every single day while they are on lockdown. And so this woman apparently did not want to test today, so they went ahead and forced her onto the ground and made her take the test. And then just below that, there's another video of yet another person jumping out of a window to their death. These things just keep on coming because people, as you might imagine, as we predicted back in 2020, the number of suicides in the United States, we predicted were going to go up because people are social animals and they want to be with people, and keeping them away from people is going to drive them crazy.
Yeah.
And so, and
it's interesting because I originally thought like there's no way that we could stay locked down sort of. I mean, and I guess we didn't really, but
not here in Keene. We were partying.
But
yeah.
to some degree, a lot of places did stay locked down. And one of the things the first thing I think of is, in such a situation, well, how long can you really stay locked down for, right? People are not going to be able to stay locked down for, really long periods of time.
Yeah, this is the longest right now as far as a citywide lockdown is concerned, because in most places lockdown still meant you could go grocery shopping.
Right.
I mean, here in, like you pointed out, here in Keene, we went out and we threw a party the first night they had the stay-at-home order, and then we had them every single week after that.
New Hampshire was interesting because even during like a 2-month period where we were locked down in quotes, it was almost every single business was part of a list of exempted businesses.
There were also a ton of loopholes in the quote-unquote stay-at-home order. In fact, that's why they didn't even call it a lockdown. It was called stay-at-home, and that was it.
Right.
So it was more of a recommendation than anything else.
The amazing thing about it with the Chinese, it's like, how stupid must that government be? Because even if they eliminated COVID completely within their borders, it still exists in the world. It'll be back the next day.
Right. Somebody's going to fly in. Yeah. They're going to have it. It is, well, that's the thing. It comes back to your other question, nobody. This isn't so much stupidity as it is a total authoritarian experiment, right? They have, this is so insane. They have facilities that they have built simply for quarantining people that are humongous. They're putting them into convention centers. There was images I saw today taken from the outside of a building where it's nighttime, and so all the lights are on inside and you can see inside, and it's floor after floor after floor after floor after floor of people in cots. Right, just little spaces. Imagine like a smaller than a jail cell kind of space for themselves, where there's cots, and they're just living in this office building that is a quarantine center, and it's just absolutely insane. And then there was another one where people are in tents. They've taken tents and they've put them on pavement on a closed bridge, and they're forcing people to live outdoors
under the bridge.
No. On top of the bridge.
On top of the bridge?
A closed bridge.
It's worse than under the bridge.
Yeah, so it's raining on these people.
Oh, wow.
And there's like one porta potty for God knows how many people to share.
Wow. Because this is obviously the best way to deal with sick people.
I mean, and this just goes to beg the question of what other kinds of diseases are going to result in those types of conditions. I mean, we don't remember.
Oh, if you don't die of COVID, it doesn't matter. Dying of anything else is fine.
I mean, it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, we don't remember.
The science is settled.
we don't remember this, because we've lived in like a first world country, all of us, and probably most of our listeners. But there used to be a time, and there still is to some degree, of different diseases spreading around, especially in certain parts of the world that the living conditions aren't as good. And when you force people in a city like Shenzhen, which living conditions are not.
Is that the same as Shanghai?
Or Shanghai?
I'm saying it wrong. The city we're talking about here.
They are locking down other areas of China, by the way. It's not just Shanghai, but that's where it all started.
Right. So, but when you're talking about a city with modern facilities, to some degree,
China's pretty modern.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
We're not talking about like rural China, right? So we're talking about modern facilities. But if you start taking away those modern facilities, which is what you're doing here, you're going to start to see other diseases crop up and spread because of contamination from porta potties that maybe aren't being cleaned properly, and
being
all sorts
forced
of other
into a closer confinement than they otherwise would be now in these quarantine centers.
So you're going to end up having situations where, yes, these people are separated and maybe they're not spreading their COVID. I'm presuming they're doing this to people who have tested positive for COVID.
That's correct.
But those people who have tested positive for COVID and are now in these cramped conditions are going to end up passing other diseases back and forth, and that's going to kill people.
Across Chinese social media, this is from the Economist story about a guy who lives in Shanghai. He's been there for the last 2 months. He says the story of the lockdown has been typed out in a kind of disappearing digital ink. People take to their phones and computers to rant about food shortages or medical disasters, or to post footage of large protests, only to see their complaints scrubbed from the internet by China's army of censors. For a time, the word Shanghai became unsearchable, as if the Communist Party was pretending the city didn't exist as long as it was rife with COVID.
It's an uncity.
The loudest protests have found new life in memes and cryptic slogans before being washed away in another wave of, quote, harmonization.
See, it doesn't mean anything unless government officials die, is what I'm really starting to think about this. You have to make them hurt, or you haven't done anything.
I understand where you're coming from. I, of course, don't think violence is the solution, but certainly
violence is the problem.
Yeah,
and there's no way to answer this violence except with violence.
I disagree. I think that mass civil disobedience, mass non-cooperation,
mass civil disobedience will bring mass beatings unless you defend yourself from those beatings with violence. There's no other way around it. Do you think the Chinese won't kill those people if they go out in the street?
They absolutely will.
So the only answer is violence.
I think there's something to be said about defensive violence. But I certainly would not be proposing.
It is defensive. I'm proposing defensive violence. I'm saying it's about time these people defended themselves. Defended their lives.
It's hard to disagree with you, but
from a moral perspective,
they're being murdered. Their lives are being stolen from them. They need to start killing people.
Well, from a moral perspective, you're not wrong. You do absolutely have the right to use violence in self-defense. And there's a strong argument that this is a time.
And
for
there's
that.
nobody, not a single person, working for the Chinese government who does not deserve to die.
Well, again, my position on this one is that you are still going to be put to death if you resist.
But at least you
violence.
can take some of the scum with you.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the situations.
Send them to hell.
This is one of the situations where I feel that even if you have a moral prerogative to defend yourself using violence, it's still not necessarily the best strategy.
It's better than jumping off a building.
I'm with you.
At least
I'm with
you
you on
get
that,
to take some garbage with you when you die.
I mean, if it's going to be targeted against government, that's using violence against you. I mean, yeah, it's hard to disagree with that.
The number here is 603-283-6160. The question is, what is going to inspire other people to stand up, whether peacefully or not?
Yeah.
Because most people are just doing what they're told.
Free Talk Live.
What is your goal? What do you want of this revolution that you speak of?
You got to stir things up enough so that people will actually revolt in a big way.
And what will that result in?
Millions of people in the streets, and the military guys ain't going to like it.
So what is your goal? You don't really know, do you? You don't really know what you want besides chaos.
A bloody revolution in the streets is
You
the
want a
only
bloody
way.
revolution? This is why I don't want to associate with people like you. Thank you for the call. You're dangerous and crazy, in my opinion, if you're talking about bloody revolution. Violent revolution just results in more violence in the future because the people who were the most violent are the ones that rise to power in whatever new power structure is created after the revolution's all over and done with, after the blood has spilt. Whoopie-doo, you've changed out one gang of criminals for another gang of thugs.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern. Live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealestate.com
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
Hi, I'm Derek J. To me, an activist's calling is to actively work to advance a cause. The cause for which I work is personal freedom. I believe my life is best when I engage in voluntary interactions and self-government. I reject the idea that anyone else has a higher claim to my life or my body than I do. I see people who call themselves the government as a threat to my personal freedom. I realize you may feel differently, but my relationship with the people who call themselves the government is completely involuntary. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. The phones are open here. You can join us. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Ian, Nobody, and Chris in the studio tonight. And you can join us online anytime over at freetalklive.com. Social.freetalklive.com is our Mastodon instance. I just posted the link to the Northrop Northrop Gundam profile on Twitter, where you can see a lot of the most just insane videos coming out of Shanghai during this now month-and-a-half-long lockdown that was originally supposed to last 5 days, mind you. Now 45 days. According to some in the city.
Just 2 weeks to flatten the curve.
Yeah, and we're going to get back to more of the description from somebody who's actually there, who's living this insanity. But first, we go to Major Payne calling from Michigan. You're on Free Talk Live.
Good evening. Thank you. As far as the last hoorah you guys were having, I think I got to agree with Chris. The ancestry that survived before us ran toward the sound of the guns. If you run away from them, you're just going to be slaughtered and captured, and your children and wives sold into captivity. That's the way history runs.
You said you agree with Chris? I'm pretty sure you were saying you agree with Nobody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was the one having a
Nobody?
fit.
All right. Wrong voice.
I was a little bit more not sure that's the best strategy. Yeah. I mean, it's one thing, it's, just because you have a moral, you're in the morally correct position doesn't necessarily mean it's the best solution. But at the same time, this is one of the situations where it's like, I'm not sure that it's gonna help the situation, but at the same time, it's hard to argue somebody who's going to kill themselves not to take out others who are
the oppressor.
Committing others who are oppressing them.
I don't see any other end game.
What else, Major? What else you want to say?
Well, as far as the Chinese go, you guys, or Taiwan or Shanghai and whatnot, Shanghai ancient was a word for like if you'd got snatched and thrown onto a vessel.
That's right.
Been
Yeah, even Shanghai.
Yeah.
You know? But you remember a couple, 3 weeks ago, you guys were talking about this when it first started, dropping off groceries and stuff rotting in the streets, and dog packs and killing the dogs and all this stuff. And I told you that the Chinese were going out and buying little fake grass mats to try to teach their dogs to go pooty on. And they were killing them anyway. But it reminded me of a movie from back in the 70s. There was in a tough part of town, there was a little wimpy kid going to school, and there was a big bully kid that was hoorahing him real bad. And he shows up at his house one day, and he says, "You come out, you fight me." He says, "You don't come out and fight me, I'm going to eat your dog." And it reminds me of the attack on the meat packing plants going on here, you know. There's 2 of them have had planes fly into them. But the good news is from the A&H News Network that the pork processing plant in Washington is still functioning properly.
You mean D.C. Thanks for the call tonight, Major. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that is a weird story. I saw Tucker Carlson cover that.
Yeah, we talked about it twice already this week. The processing plants that have taken fire. It's not real clear as to whether or not they're actually catching on fire more often than they would normally. But it is interesting.
There's been a whole string of them. It makes me wonder if somebody is trying to shut down parts of the supply chain, and if so, why?
So I want to get back into what's happening in Shanghai. This is from The Economist. He says he's talking about how the Communist Party is.
But don't worry, by the way, the Chinese government says all of this is just disinformation.
Yeah, he's talking about how they're basically cleaning the internet of references to Shanghai. He says the loudest protests have found new life in memes and cryptic slogans before being washed away in another wave of, quote, harmonization, unquote, which is local internet slang for the government's erasure of dissent. Shanghai residents are capturing the humor and horror of this experience in their own way. Start with the basics of survival, procuring food. Chinese shopping apps have a function called group buying, which in normal times mean people can club together and save money by buying in bulk. In the chaos of the lockdown, however, this has become one of the only ways to receive a delivery of vegetables or meat. For anyone wondering what a techno-dystopian future might look like, this may offer a clue. Scoring meals can mean hours of monitoring your phone, with tens of thousands of people trying to purchase the same small quantity of goods at any one time. Quick typing, fervent refreshing, and repeated pressing of buy buttons are essential. Digital breadlines form, with many ending up empty-handed as supplies run out in seconds. And then, as we learned from another individual a couple of weeks ago when we covered this back then, he was saying that the government will only let the 2 people out from every apartment building to pick up the day's supplies that are delivered to a specific location. They have checkpoints set up all over the place. So the supplies will be delivered to your nearest checkpoint. You, if you're one of the 2 people in the apartment complex who has volunteered for this position, you then go to this checkpoint, but only between 2 hours in every single day. So if your 2 hours out are from 3 to 5 p.m. in the afternoon, and the meat that was ordered was delivered at 8 in the morning, and it's 80 degrees outside all day.
Wow.
What do you think that's going to do to your meat delivery?
Yikes.
So even if you can get the meat delivered to you, doesn't mean that it actually gets to you in an edible form because of the government. Wow. He says here in online shopping lingo, the organizer of a group buying circle is called a tuanzang. The word has taken on a new meaning among Chinese netizens after an anecdote about Shanghai's top Communist Party chief Li Kang was shared online. Speaking to locals during the lockdown, the politician was allegedly confused about group buying and wondered aloud what a tuanzang did. The term is now used in a tongue-in-cheek way to mock how out of touch the Communist Party is with regular folks. Chinese state media has heralded the Shanghai lockdown as trailblazing. It often marvels at the technological wonders of drones and robotic dogs that blast messages over loudspeakers to the city's captives. As officials congratulated themselves on their handling of the response, a video shared online showed a drone telling residents to, quote, suppress your soul's urges for freedom. Did you guys see that one?
Yeah.
Now, we can't understand it because it's in Chinese, but that was a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, they had subtitles.
Where that
Chinese
thing was
is Greek to me.
That thing was flying around. But then this was at the time when people are shouting out their windows and were very, very upset. But public anger at the government seems to be mounting. Videos circulating online showed elderly people behind gates begging for food. Men in goggles and white hazmat suits are seen beating people who have not complied with the rules. Some people now refer to these lockdown enforcers as Bai Weibing, or White Guards, a play on the Red Guards who terrorized China during the Cultural Revolution in the 1960s.
And if I recall correctly, it's the same government.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they've changed the head out, I'm sure.
Isn't it like some of the head people, aren't they the same? That was
Since 1965?
I don't think so.
Don't think so.
The guy who's running it now it's the Winnie the Pooh looking guy.
Yeah, he would have been a child
I
in
thought
the
he
60s.
had somehow taken part in that or something. I don't know. I don't know.
No way, dude. You're talking about 50 years ago.
Yeah, I know. That's what I mean. It was shocking to me when I heard about it.
I mean, they may have some very elderly people that are still there, but most of them are probably retired, dead by now.
Yeah. I'm not saying most of them. I'm saying like there are some people at the very top.
Sure.
Yeah.
There probably are because there's a lot of old people in power in
Everywhere.
China.
Yeah, right, yeah.
But the president I think is not that old.
It might be I'm mistaken, and what I'm thinking of is the guy is still alive.
You might be thinking of Joe Biden.
No,
he's in his 80s.
No. It might be that I'm thinking.
And he was oppressing people.
The guy who did the all the food shortages and people dying off.
Talking about North Korea?
Mao?
Mao. Yeah, Mao. I'm probably thinking of Mao or somebody.
Mao was in
gone.
the 1930s.
Yeah.
I think.
No, Mao. Is Mao the guy? What's the Chinese dude, man? There's a Chinese guy.
There's a bunch of Chinese tyrants, man.
There's a lot of Chinese people.
He planned
You're going to have to look this one up.
He planned the whole
You're not
killing
getting
off
anywhere.
people through like food shortages and things.
Yeah,
and
you're going to have to look it up, or somebody's going to have to call in to save you on this one because we don't know. Parcels of vegetables arrive unexpectedly at my door. Some are government handouts in big styrofoam crates. Others are ones I've managed to order. Many are already rotten by the time that they reach me. One package was infested with moths that fluttered around the lamps in my room for days. The sulfurous odor of rotting cabbage has become familiar. It's an apt metaphor for the city's predicament. The slang phrase bailan, or left to rot, has become common on social media. The implication is that this sophisticated metropolis has fallen into the wrong hands and stopped functioning.
It's fallen into the hands of the government, and that's always the wrong hand.
And the people let it happen. The number is 603-283-6160, because if all they'd done was refuse to go inside, no amount of men in suits would be able to do anything about it. We're talking about 25 million people here. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live, Hour 3 on the way. More about Shanghai coming up. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, D.C., I'm Benji Haya. Ukrainian officials say the capital Kiev has been hit by Russian strikes, which came as the UN Secretary-General was visiting. William Dendelo reports from Riga in Latvia.
Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba says the Russian cruise missile strike was a heinous act of barbarism that demonstrates Russia's attitude to Ukraine, Europe and the world. Thursday evening's attack came as UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres was in Kyiv for talks with President Volodymyr Zelensky. The Ukrainian president said the cruise missile attack was an effort to humiliate the UN and all it represents, and that a strong response is required. Russia's Ministry of Defense confirmed the strikes destroyed a rocket and space industry facility. On his trip to Ukraine, which came days after a visit to Moscow, Guterres said intense discussions were underway to evacuate civilians from a besieged steelworks in Mariupol. William Dendelo, Riga.
A 22-year-old former US Marine has been killed while fighting alongside Ukrainian forces. Willie Joseph Cancel is believed to be the first American citizen killed in combat with Russia. Tony Waterman has more.
According to Cancel's family, he was working for a private military contracting company when he was killed on Monday. In an interview with CNN, Cancel's mother said he had been in Ukraine since mid-March and had wanted to go because he believed in what the Ukrainians were fighting for and to prevent the war from coming to America's shores. His family says his body has not yet been recovered. The U.S. State Department has urged U.S. citizens not to travel to Ukraine to participate in the war. Cancel leaves behind a 7-month-old baby and a wife who has called him a hero. Tony Waterman, Texas.
Meanwhile, 2 British volunteers have been captured by the Russian military in Ukraine. That's according to an aid agency. Inflation in the Eurozone's reached a new record high. Energy prices and the war in Ukraine are weighing heavily on the bloc's hopes of an economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. And the identity of the Conservative Party MP accused of watching pornography in the UK's House of Commons has been revealed. Ollie Barrett has the latest from London.
Neil Parish is the Conservative MP for Tiverton and Honiton in the west of England, and we're told that he has had now a conversation with the Conservative Party's chief whip about the claims that had been made against him, and the chief whip says that Neil Parish is now reporting himself to the Standards Committee of the House of Commons for a further investigation. The Conservative Party had already referred the allegations to another independent watchdog to be looked into after 2 female Tory MPs claimed that they had seen Mr. Parish watching pornography on one occasion in the House of Commons.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. As we head into the 3rd month of Russia's war on Ukraine, there's every indication that it is going to become a long, grinding conflict. But even if it is contained to Ukraine itself and does not drag NATO into direct conflict with Moscow, the Putin regime is now referring to the conflict as a proxy war between Russia and the United States. That was the phrase that Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov used earlier this week, and Foreign Affairs analyst Tim Marshall thinks that on this occasion, Vladimir Putin's top foreign affairs advisor is right.
He's not talking about a nuclear war. He's warning that you can't rule that out. It's because they're rattled. They saw the 2 American secretaries of state, Defense and the State Department, show up in Kyiv over the weekend and openly say what they're going to be giving the Ukrainians. They even listed the weapons. The Americans, I think, have made the calculation that they can shift this crisis from what was simply trying to manage it, damage limitation on the Ukrainian side, into a strategic opportunity to really inflict damage on the Russians themselves. So it is a proxy war, I'm afraid.
Russia's Ministry of Education says children will be taught about the justification for the war when they return to Russia's classrooms for a new academic year in September, suggesting the Kremlin thinks the conflict will still be underway then. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Let's return to our top stories. Ukrainian officials have described a cruise missile attack on the capital Kiev as a heinous act. A 22-year-old former US Marine has been killed while fighting alongside Ukrainian forces. And inflation in the Eurozone has reached a record high, with energy prices and the war in Ukraine weighing heavily on the bloc's hopes of an economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. That's the latest feature story news. I'm Benji Haya in Washington.
This is the Onion Week in Review. A report by Stanford University researchers released Thursday found that Americans spend 90% of their waking hours staring at glowing rectangles. Researchers identified more than 30 varieties of iridescent rectangles, ranging from personal and work rectangles to rectangles that heat food and those that can fit right in one's pocket.
From the moment Americans wake up, they are captivated by these bright, pulsing rectangles. In fact, if you look at the data, it's hard to find a single minute when the public isn't captivated by these, I'm sorry, where were we?
In local news, a run-over squirrel is remembered as frantic and indecisive. And in other news, a trail of rose petals leads a wife to a sink full of dishes. Prince Fielder reports to spring training exactly the right amount overweight, and a local yard sale reeks of divorce. If you don't hear the sound of my voice the same time next week, alert my family and then visit theonion.com/newsbeat.
Free Talk Live. It is Free Talk Live. We're kicking off the third hour here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. In Shanghai, China, they're on something like day number 45 of a total lockdown.
Don't you envy the people living in that communist workers' paradise?
Yeah, right.
No, it sounds absolutely like a hellscape. You've literally got people jumping out of windows off of the top of their apartments to kill themselves in frustration, presumably because it's difficult to get food. They have no human contact of which to speak. It is just absolutely horrifying to be kept in your apartment and prevented from leaving. They've erected gates out in front of apartment complexes to prevent people who might get the idea that they want to go for a walk or somehow get out of their house because they're going crazy from actually leaving. So they've literally turned these apartment buildings into prisons. I saw another clip of from the Northrop Gundam Twitter account where he's just retweeting all kinds of crazy videos. And usually the videos out of China are very short, which is curious because it's like they're trying to bypass, some sort of restriction on data. We were talking about how they're locking down. We know they've got the Great Chinese Wall, right? Like the internet
wall. The Great
wall.
Firewall of China.
So most of the Chinese videos that I'm seeing out there are not any longer than 15, maybe 20 seconds. If you find one that's longer than 30 seconds or a minute, I mean, it's rare. And it makes me wonder if they're keeping their videos purposely short so they can send them out via whatever transfer methods without getting flagged as a potential video, right? Because videos are usually very large in file size if they're, any decent amount of time. And so just some of the little clips, these 15-second clips are just absolutely horrifying. One was a example of the innovative methods they're using to, I'm putting quotes around that, air quotes, to keep people inside their homes, where Chinese agents in full body, hazmat suits with drills are going and drilling holes into concrete outside of somebody's front door or outside of an apartment building door, and then sticking metal rods down into that hole So to prevent, and they do it right next to the opening of the door, so therefore the door is prevented from being able to open by hitting a metal rod that's sticking into concrete outside. It makes it very, very difficult to bust that door open from the inside. And then, of course, you add to that the fact they're putting up metal gates around these building entrances just to keep people in what is called a zero COVID policy. It's absolutely insane. It's also zero freedom. But we're sharing with you a editorial piece here, I guess an opinion piece from somebody who's actually in Shanghai. His name is Don Wineland, Wineland, W-E-I-N-L-A-N-D. He's writing for The Economist in an article titled, "Lockdown in Shanghai, I've Caught a Glimpse of Our Techno-Dystopian Future. Rotting cabbage, digital bread lines, and bossy drones." And I wanted to just continue here where he's talking about how frequently, when he is able to get food delivered to his home, a lot of it is already rotting. He had moths come out of one package that fluttered around his room for days. And he says that when the lockdown was announced, millions of people had just hours to prepare. It was launched without considering how the elderly or disabled would pass the weeks in isolation, or cancer and diabetes patients would receive life-saving medication and treatment, or how long it would take pregnant women to get to the hospital. Tens of thousands of businesses were closed without thinking about how employees would get through the month without a paycheck, or how company owners could pay the rent. Countless residents struggled to find basic provisions such as cabbage and pork loins rotted on the shelves. Fewer were still prepared to be carted off to the mass quarantine facilities that are masquerading as hospitals. Many people have died as a result of not being able to access medical treatment for conditions other than COVID. But avoiding COVID deaths has been the only thing that mattered to officials. And you guys were speculating on that in the last hour, and that's absolutely the case.
Yeah, if you don't die of COVID, it's okay.
Yeah, there was a couple weeks ago when we talked about Shanghai in detail at that time, there were video clips of, there was one guy, an elderly man, lying outside his apartment complex. They hadn't put up the gates yet, right? The gates came in the last week or so. They had tried to take him to different hospitals where he was refused. They would not let this man in. I don't know what his condition was, but it wasn't good. He was laying down. He could not get up.
This happened in the United States, actually, too.
Right, where people couldn't get into the hospital for
they were
quote-unquote
refused.
elective surgeries.
Refused. I don't even know if it was just elective surgeries, but other medical needs that needed to be addressed.
Or if you could get in, your family couldn't come with you to accompany you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. That was definitely true.
The Communist Party sees this single-mindedness as a quality that allows it to blast through obstacles in its path. But it has also rendered politicians strikingly unaware of how sentiment in the city has shifted in recent weeks. In a letter to guests, a hotel in my district boldly remarked, quote, "COVID is not the thing we're afraid of. It's government policy," unquote.
Truth.
For some of the hotel's older staff, the situation has sparked painful memories. I spoke to an employee in his early 60s who's been living in the hotel for weeks away from his wife. Normally a cheerful man, when asked about the lockdown, he only mumbles under his breath that they, the party, don't care how average people live. The lockdown has
or whether they live.
Indeed. The lockdown has not been without humor. Shanghai residents joke that the world has lain flat or given up on controlling COVID and let it run wild. They, too, would like to lie flat, but China's central government has forced them instead to do sit-ups in its attempt to achieve zero COVID. Tensions between Shanghai...
Do sit-ups help with COVID?
It's an analogy.
Oh, okay.
Tensions between Shanghai and other parts of China have existed for ages. The Shanghainese fancy themselves more cosmopolitan and sophisticated than folk from other cities. Many of them feel that Shanghai has been marauded by outsiders who cannot understand their language or culture. The lockdown appears to have breathed new life into localist sentiment. In December, an official from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Zhao Lijian, told foreign reporters they could go chuckle to themselves, or Tao Zele, for being able to live comfortably in China during the pandemic. During the lockdown, a photo of a Shanghai resident with a picture of Zhao and the chuckle quote taped to his back has been shared widely on social media. The phrase, which along with Zhao's name also became unsearchable on Chinese social media for a time, now serves as a riposte to the distorted vision of the country the Chinese government presents to the world. Locals have been hard at work creating a counter-narrative. A Shanghai-based rapper called Astro posted a song called New Slave on YouTube with frank lyrics about what's happening in the city. He notes that, quote, those in uniform care only about their careers and don't give an S about life or dignity, unquote.
That's true of uniforms everywhere.
Wouldn't surprise me if he got snatched away one of these nights.
No, they like to harvest the organs of dissidents.
On the evening of April 22nd, a video cataloging many of the government's lies and missteps over the past few weeks was shared so widely across Chinese social media that for a short period of time, censors appeared unable to keep up. The government is cracking down on dissenters. People who post unfavorable commentary on Twitter are visited by police. Signs in COVID camps warn patients that posting images of their surroundings on social media could violate the law. But through the perpetual haze of China's case of long COVID, a crisper image of the Shanghai lockdown is starting to emerge. And boy, is it ugly. So that's just a little peek into the life of what it's like being in Shanghai right now, where 25 million people are being locked down with no end in sight. The government is saying they will not let people out of their homes until zero COVID is reached.
That will never happen.
It's exactly right.
So permanent imprisonment or life imprisonment might be
until you kill yourself.
Yeah, basically.
Or until some sort of revolution starts. And there have been little smatterings of it here and there, apparently, at least according to some of the videos that have been released, with people protesting in the streets, and not enough agents are there to stop them. So, I mean, all it takes is people being willing to leave their homes, but of course now they've got to deal with the metal walls that have been erected around their apartment complexes in order to even do that. So the longer they've waited, the more imprisoned that they have become.
It's not going to get easier. Yep. Now's the time to move.
This is why we went out the very same night the stay-at-home order went into place and continue to go out week after week after week here in New Hampshire. There's more coming up in moments. This is Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover brings her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to MyMagicMud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. MyMagicMud.com, FTL20.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here tonight, we've got Ian.
Nobody. And Chris.
You can join us online. Head over to freetalklive.com. Enjoy the features over there. Coming up, we'll get into the EU, European Union, and some of the more crackdowns they're doing in the world of the Internet. That's on the way. Of course, it pales in comparison to physically housing people in insane quarantine camps. I just showed you guys the photos that I was referring to earlier. I didn't have them in front of me earlier, but I think I also just shared those out on our social media. Yeah, so if you want to see this, go to social.freetalklive.com and make sure you follow the FTL Free Talk Live profile there. These buildings that appear to be new construction. I mean, because we're looking into...
definitely new construction.
Yeah, we're looking into these buildings here, and it doesn't look like they've just taken over some office complexes. It doesn't look like these what appear to be completely empty floors with no real identifying marks except for the fact that they're full of cots and people. That doesn't seem like they had any previous life, right? Like these buildings don't seem like they were taken over from, Mitsubishi or something like that.
Yeah.
That was just there doing business. It looks like these are quarantine facilities and really creepy stuff.
Yeah, it's almost so. It looks almost fake.
It's real.
It looks almost fake. It looks like it was almost mocked up for some purpose, some political propaganda or something.
Yeah. No, this is really happening. These aren't the only images of quarantine facilities. There are others that are not in high rises. I mean, these are maybe 20-story buildings or something like that. But there's others where they're very flat, like convention centers with a bunch of beds in them. Others where there's like these housing units that have been built outdoors with 2 floors. And I saw one piece of footage with one of these outdoor housing units, and there was a truck that came along with supplies, and a huge crowd of people followed this truck. There was almost no Chinese agents in the vicinity, and they swarmed this truck. It was like a supply, like food was on this truck, and these people are so hungry. They swarmed this truck, and the whole truck was offloaded of every single box within seconds. So, I mean, this is just an absolutely insane situation. Let's go to Sarah. She's in New Mexico. You're on Free Talk Live, and Sarah identifies as a communist. And so, Sarah, you've been listening. I know normally you don't listen to the show, but you've been on hold at least for the last 15 minutes or so as we've been discussing the lockdown in Shanghai. And I just want to see if you're on board, if you think the Shanghai government is doing the right thing.
Communism at work?
Well, I don't know. I guess they're doing the best they can. I don't know if it's just because it's the communist-ism. I don't think, like we're not doing so well right now either. And we've been through Great Depressions, a lot of bad economics under capitalism. So,
when did we have free markets? When exactly was that?
Well,
was it when FDR stole all the gold? Was that free market? 70% tax rates? Was that free market?
I do not understand what you're talking about.
She can't even fathom what a free market is. She does not understand the words coming out of your mouth.
Well, I really don't think it's not about communism. They're just dealing with the coronavirus the way they can. And I'm sure they're going through.
How is locking up sick people the best you can do? Not that these people even seem to be particularly sick. They're sick of being locked up. But, it's a cold. Why not just let people catch a cold and then get better?
Well, why are people wearing masks in San Francisco and L.A.? They're forced
because
to
they're
wear
idiots.
Masks here. Well, it's capitalism. They don't have much freedom either.
Where is their capitalism?
What does this have to do with capitalism?
Capitalism is free markets.
Well,
we don't have freedom.
Yeah, that's not capitalism.
We have more freedom than the Chinese, but everybody has more freedom than the Chinese.
But more freedom doesn't mean that it's complete freedom, or otherwise they would not wear any masks because they're being forced to in L.A. County, and it's mandatory now.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Forced by the government. That makes it a socialist program. Okay. Capitalism is when people are free to make their own choices. Socialism is when choices are forced on you by the government.
Yeah, for the safety of the public.
And how is it keeping anybody safe? Masks don't work. They don't do any good.
Especially not these masks.
Wait a minute, I called in about that.
She wants to change the topic. She can't handle an actual discussion about communism, the very thing that she calls in to frequently proclaim as the savior for all mankind.
Well, you got communism. You admit that we got socialism, communism in America. So why are you saying the word any different or better than communism in China?
I'm not saying that. Well, why are we better than China? Well, obviously, we don't have 25 million people locked up for nothing. But so that makes us better than China. But we're certainly not free here.
Yeah,
the reason we have poverty is because we have socialism.
We're talking about a matter of degrees here, right? Just because China is worse doesn't mean we're not also, it's bad here too.
Yeah.
Any place you have a government, you're not free.
We live in an imperfect world. This is planet Earth. It's almost like hell here.
But you support this. I just want to clarify. You support what the Chinese government is doing, locking people down 24 hours a day. No way they can leave their apartments.
No crime.
I cannot make a clear. I'm not running the country. I'm not living over there. I don't know how it was a bad crisis.
That's a cowardly excuse to have an opinion, Sarah.
Sarah, I have a question for you. Have you left your house in the last 45 days?
Yes, I did.
Isn't that contradictory to what you're supporting?
Well, she's not taking a position. She's avoiding the question. She's true. She's saying they're doing what they have to do, but not saying she supports it.
Okay, why does everything have to be yes or no? Black and white. Things in life are not a complete black or white. Okay? I do not know. I don't have proper knowledge. They're dealing the COVID virus in China where it's expand to the best of their knowledge. You know what I mean?
It's just a coward. It's a coward's excuse to say, "Oh, well, the government knows best, so let's just say they know what they're doing."
Well, they clearly
must know what they're doing. Sorry, Sarah. I don't think you would be wanting to stay at home in your trailer for, as you pointed out, Chris, 45 days, let alone a week.
Yeah.
Like 1 week would be insane for a lot of people. I mean, we've been in jail before, Nobody, and we can see what happens for somebody on an overnight. Like, if you're there, you hear people come in there banging on the doors. They do not want to be kept against their will. It is something that is anathema to the human being.
Freedom is what the human soul craves.
Which is exactly why the Chinese...
The monster soul, which craves power over others.
More coming up.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Carl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, D.C., I'm Benji Haya. Ukrainian officials say the capital Kiev has been hit by Russian strikes, which came as the UN Secretary-General was visiting. William Denzilo reports from Riga in Latvia.
Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba says the Russian cruise missile strike was a heinous act of barbarism that demonstrates Russia's attitude to Ukraine, Europe and the world. Thursday evening's attack came as UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres was in Kyiv for talks with President Volodymyr Zelensky. The Ukrainian president said the cruise missile attack was an effort to humiliate the UN and all it represents, and that a strong response is required. Russia's Ministry of Defense confirmed the strikes destroyed a rocket and space industry facility. On his trip to Ukraine, which came days after a visit to Moscow, Guterres said intense discussions were underway to evacuate civilians from a besieged steelworks in Mariupol. William Denzilo, Riga.
A 22-year-old former US Marine has been killed while fighting alongside Ukrainian forces. Willie Joseph Cancel is believed to be the first American citizen killed in combat with Russia. Tony Waterman has more.
According to Cancel's family, he was working for a private military contracting company when he was killed on Monday. In an interview with CNN, Cancel's mother said he had been in Ukraine since mid-March and had wanted to go because he believed in what the Ukrainians were fighting for and to prevent the war from coming to America's shores. His family says his body has not yet been recovered. The U.S. State Department has urged U.S. citizens not to travel to Ukraine to participate in the war. Cancel leaves behind a 7-month-old baby and a wife who has called him a hero. Tony Waterman, Texas.
Meanwhile, 2 British volunteers have been captured by the Russian military in Ukraine. That's according to an aid agency. Inflation in the Eurozone's reached a new record high. Energy prices and the war in Ukraine are weighing heavily on the bloc's hopes of an economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. And the identity of the Conservative Party MP accused of watching pornography in the UK's House of Commons has been revealed. Ollie Barrett has the latest from London.
Neil Parish is the Conservative MP for Tiverton and Honiton in the west of England, and we're told that he has had now a conversation with the Conservative Party's chief whip about the claims that had been made against him, and the chief whip says that Neil Parish is now reporting himself to the Standards Committee of the House of Commons for a further investigation. The Conservative Party had already referred the allegations to another independent watchdog to be looked into after 2 female Tory MPs claimed that they had seen Mr. Parish watching pornography on one occasion in the House of Commons.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FS.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And you can bring up whatever's on your mind. Thank you to Brian LaPla, who is a Free Talk Live supporter via our AMPS program. AMPS stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support. And Brian is contributing at least $10 a month. He's a gold level, which really appreciate the support over there at amps.freetalklive.com. That's amps.freetalklive.com. And you get some cool benefits for doing that. We definitely appreciate the help. Thank you, Brian. And thank you to the over 80 people who support us via that Patreon. Once again, it's amps.freetalklive.com. With you tonight, it's Ian.
Nobody.
And Chris.
We're going to go back to your phone calls and thoughts. Just, again, scrolling through some of these insane posts from the Northrop Gundam Twitter profile. You go back earlier today, there's an image from, I don't even know where this one was taken. It's somewhere in China. A groundbreaking invention from China, a confession booth, not with a priest, but connected straight to the Communist Party central system with a webcam. And it says on the booth, confession to Communist Party. And it's like a large phone booth where you can go and sit down, and there's a touch screen there, and then a camera, and I guess you can just tell them what you've done. And
who needs a god when you've got a government?
Why would anybody do this?
Again, it's a religion.
Does it give you immunity or something?
Probably not.
What's the incentive to
snitch on yourself?
Snitch on yourself.
Yeah. It's like he points out, it's a religion. I mean, these people, they may believe they've done wrong, and they're harboring in their hearts the truth of what they've done, and they must let the Communist Party know.
This kind of reminds me, though, when people get questioned by police and they confess everything, and it's like, why? What is going through your head?
They've been trained. They've been programmed to do this stuff. Let's go to Dimitri. He's on the line in Tennessee listening to WGOW in Chattanooga. Go ahead, Dimitri.
Yeah, absolutely. So do me a favor, put a bookmark in the freedom is, imprisonment is an anathema to the human condition for a second, because I have something to say about that too. But
sure.
No. So about the China thing, they were talking about the neighborhoods. I couldn't believe what I was hearing about the denial about what's going on right now in front of everybody's eyes in China from whoever was on the phone earlier. There's a lot going on right now, but the way it works with the Shanghai lockdown is they apparently, this is what, I follow a lot of China news and stuff, like actual stuff from there, or from around, NCD, China Observer, stuff like that. But anyways, they first did neighborhood by neighborhood. So they would take a small neighborhood, and they said they were on lockdown, going temporarily on lockdown, and then it was a temporary blah blah blah. It became 15 days. It became an indefinite thing, and then next neighborhood happened. So it was kind of like a salami slicing thing, kind of how they take territory in a way.
Right.
They just did it slow by slow. Because Shanghai's huge. It's like 25 million people.
Correct.
City. It's like a mega city. So anyway, yeah, I mean, people are literally starving to death. When it's gotten so bad, when people, dissidents have their organs harvested, when it's gotten so bad that they're leaking all of this stuff and even talking about it and even protesting, it's really bad and legit. And you can see so many families, like people suffering, people screaming from the windows, literal, there's some footage out there of what shows to be, appears to be somebody that's died because they, because they're, they had diabetes or something like that. And they couldn't get any medicine or anything because they couldn't go out. So at first, when they locked down, neighborhood by neighborhood, they would allow one member of the family to leave at once a week for food. That's what they were doing at the beginning. It wasn't that big of a deal. And then suddenly they completely stopped allowing people to do that at all. And they have, China has a great, if anything, they do distribution better than anybody. They're really good at it. They have a
not when the government's in charge of it.
Well, yeah, right. No, exactly. No, the only reason they have any money it's because the government allowed them to make money.
That's right.
It allowed them to have capital. That's literally the only reason they have any money. And the reason
that's right. That's the reason why China's standard of living has gone up significantly in the last few decades, was because there was a loosening and a more of allowing situation for people to go into business there, even though the government's still involved at some level. And Chris, I know that you've got Chinese suppliers for Think Penguin.
Yes.
Maybe you know a little bit more about this.
I do, actually. So I've been trying to communicate with factories in China, and I've had trouble. So most of them are in Shenzhen, not Shanghai. But
Shenzhen has also been shut down. And I guess they've let up a bit, but it's still basically shut down, I guess, or something to that effect. And yeah, it's been about a month, I think, and even now I'm having issues with like getting responses from factories because I want to place orders with the factory and have stuff manufactured, and I'm just not getting any responses.
Do you know what percentage of these factories is actually owned by the Chinese Communist Party?
I don't.
I've always been curious about that because I've always heard that they have some involvement in every company.
There is. I know 50.
Dimitri, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say, since Deng Xiaoping was the one who allowed them to start, having capitalism and doing things like that, and since Xi Jinping literally now, state was, they had kind of a loose control. They didn't enforce the law. There was a lot of law, shitload of it, but they didn't.
I'm sorry, we can't let you say that on the radio. I do want to put you on hold here because you do know a lot about the topic, so I want to make sure we can get you on to finish that thought. We can give you a second crack here. Dimitri, just remember you are on broadcast radio, so please don't do that again. What were you saying there?
Sorry about that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my bad. Sorry. No, I was going to say, so yeah, it was it was a loose hold. They had it, but they had the option to do it whenever, like any government does, to take over. And eventually Xi Jinping came to power, and since he's been in power, he's been totally taking everything over like crazy, like no other. The last couple of years, actually, in fact, he recently, and it was through the anti-corruption campaign that was actually just taking attacking his political rivals, like in the Jiang Zemin camp. Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought.
So you're saying, just to clarify, the previous president
everything totally nationalized again.
So the previous president opened things up. People were able to start businesses. And then the current guy, Xi Jinping, comes in and he starts nationalizing businesses and taking them over.
Yes, and taking total control. And now it's gotten to the point where they're starting a culture of, how the Alibaba guy, what's his name? I forget his name. Jack Ma. He got kidnapped by him, right? He got disappeared for a little bit. He came out and he said he was fine. He was in talks with them, and now he's spending a ton of money to the government, and he's given up ownership of everything basically to the government now.
Yeah, I have to say, I was wondering what you were talking about there with the nationalization thing.
You said, sorry, what were you saying?
I was a little confused about what you were talking about with the nationalization thing, because there's definitely been a crackdown.
Yes, it was both. It started as he's been taking more control of companies and stuff, and now he's having wealthy elites now pay more money and start this thing of coming out and talking on video. We need to give more money and help the others around us more and blah blah blah. And he's literally he's coming for their money now too. He's allowed a lot of freedom and a lot of power to a lot of people. And since Xi Jinping has come in, that's also everything's ramped up. Literally, I mean, Jiang Zemin really started the organ harvesting thing against the Falun Gong in the in the 90s or late 80s, early 90s, I forget. But it's anyways.
It does sound like you follow this pretty closely. Do you have relatives over there? What is your? Why do you have the interest? Just curious.
I obsessively follow a lot of China news and politics for years now. Because it's so absolutely mega important for us, and especially in the recent years, it's become like one of the most important geopolitical things affecting us. So I follow a lot of it. I don't know if there's a lot. I can't, of course, think of everything off the bat. Because
it's insane over there. And I thank you, Dimitri.
China Uncensored is great.
Thanks, man. I do appreciate hearing from you tonight, and that does back up what I've heard from Lily Tang Williams, if I recall correctly, who's a Free Stater, libertarian activist here in New Hampshire, also formerly from China. She escaped, and she has said similar things, that it was, again, I forget the guy's name, but the previous president had opened things up, made it so there was a lot more freedom in the marketplace in China, and that's when they really started to rise up out of poverty. And then this new guy is locking things down, taking things over.
There's definitely been a crackdown over the past year,
and it's been more than that, but because he's been around for a little while.
It's ramped up over the past year.
Oh, I bet. There's more coming up. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agrist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with agristhosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agrist Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to agristhosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's agristhosting.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. The phones are open here in the remaining moments. We have enough time for you. If you dial in right now, we can get you in here at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Tonight, it's Ian.
Nobody. And Chris.
We've been talking about China, but we may shift to focus to the European Union for the remaining moments here. Also want to invite you over to our website. We do have archives that go back for many years. You can subscribe via our podcast feeds. RSS feeds are available. Just go to feeds.freetalklive.com. You'll find a few links to those there. We've got the full feed that's got everything that we put out. We've got the digest-only feed, and we've got the full shows-only feed. You can find all of those over at feeds.freetalklive.com. Let's go to Washington State, where Jack is on the line. Go ahead, Jack.
The new Homeland Security lady, I haven't heard you talk.
The Minister of Truth?
Yeah, I'm just interested to see what you guys think.
Oh, we opened the show with that one tonight, but just to summarize for you, I mean, this is a terrible development, but not one that's unsurprising given the way things have been going. But yeah, it seems pretty much like a ministry of truth that they've created. What are they calling it? The Disinformation Governance Department or something?
Do you think it has any power? This is a real question. Do you think it can go anywhere, or do people sue against them? I'm really naive.
It's not really clear what exactly they are going to be doing quite yet, besides hollering about what they consider to be disinformation and likely using their buddies in big tech to crack down on it voluntarily. Whether or not they will have any quote-unquote power beyond that remains to be seen.
Regulatory power, I presume.
What do you guys think, though? I don't know how much time we have left, but do you think they actually have power? Because it sounds scary, if that makes sense.
I expect that eventually they will have the power to use violence, based on the fact that they're part of Homeland Security.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're under the Department of Homeland Security. So I expect them to be either having their own thugs or directing the other government thugs in the Department of Homeland Security. But I would be very surprised. I mean, the government doesn't do anything that it doesn't do violently.
I agree. What's the plus minus versus the population versus your interpretation? It's where do we start winning?
New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Basically, we
less than 20,000.
We can't free. There aren't enough libertarians in America to free the country, but there are enough libertarians in America to free New Hampshire.
Thank you, Jack, for the call tonight. Appreciate hearing from you. Unfortunately, most people who care about freedom aren't willing to actually lift a finger to do anything about it. So we do get the best of the best here in New Hampshire, and that's going to make it even harder for the libertarians elsewhere who just aren't as dedicated. They're going to lose the best activists here to New Hampshire. We're going to be making strides towards more freedom, and everywhere else is going to be getting less and less free. So over time, it will become more and more clear that New Hampshire is the destination for anyone that is actually serious about achieving more freedom in our lifetime, and hopefully eventually we'll have enough people here to where we can secede peacefully from the United States and actually then be truly the freest place on the planet by far.
Yeah, I mean, it seems already pretty apparent to me that New Hampshire is, it's achieved. It is achieving what it set out to do. I wouldn't have moved here if it wasn't. And I've been here over 5 years now, and it's really amazing. Just all of and it's kind of interesting because it's a couple of years ago it was okay, we're making progress, but we're, taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Still progress, but now it's we're taking 3-4 steps forward and no steps back. So I'm amazed, just all the little things that we.
It's a bit of an exaggeration, but it definitely has increased in the last couple of years.
Look at the numbers in terms of movers
are up record levels,
right?
I mean,
and
that's gonna
number of reps, that free staters have
also
been elected.
record levels. That's true.
Yeah,
but the cannabis decrim didn't make it through the Senate, so
that's true.
There's still a lot more we have to do.
That's
we
true.
are not there yet, but we're getting there.
You can see it. You can see it within.
There's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, right. You can see that there's light at the end of the tunnel, even though before, it's unclear if there was light. Now it's pretty clear that there's light.
I agree with you there.
If we give it time, it will hopefully.
We need more people.
It continues.
We need
which
more
I think
people.
It will.
We need thousands more liberty activists. There are people coming in here every single week. There's moving parties every single week now. There's record levels of people migrating here. The housing market's hot. I mean, it is very, very expensive compared to what it was a couple of years ago to move here. But it's expensive in a lot of places now.
Yeah, waiting so long to move. If you've known about it, you waited too long.
No, it's still not too late.
It's not too late. It's not too late.
Get here
but
soon.
You should have moved. You shouldn't wait any longer.
You'll wish you were here sooner.
Right.
But it's still not too late because you've got a built-in group of people you don't know yet, but they will be your friends likely when you get here, and you'll already have things in common with them, and you just have to find the ones that you like hanging around the most.
Yeah, it's amazing being surrounded by people who can actually see reality. It was living in in the other places that I've lived. It was like, sometimes I would question my own sanity because it's like nobody else can see what I can see. Maybe it's not real, and now, being surrounded with people who understand is makes all the difference.
Yeah, I've done a lot of traveling in my lifetime, and all over the country, all over the world, and there's nothing like New Hampshire. I didn't know what it was like to be in New Hampshire until I moved here. Well, I mean, maybe a little before I did have an idea, but yeah, I mean, I was shocked. I can't believe what has been accomplished by the migration. It just
with just a few thousand people.
Yeah, it's unbelievable to me. I've never known.
And they're pissed, by the way. The statists are not
really
happy about this. They are having seminars about free staters. In fact, they were supposed to have one this week, and they basically scuttled the thing. They were going to do a in-person seminar at a library out on the seacoast by the Democratic Party of like the seacoast or whatever. And it was going to be one of these anti-free stater things where they have a presentation and how we can stop the free staters and
good luck.
That kind of thing.
Move to New York, guys.
Too late, guys.
Just give it up.
Yeah, and what happened was a bunch of free staters showed up. And they were supposed to have an online component where if you couldn't make it physically to the library, you could tune in online. Well, they locked out everyone from coming into the online thing because people were trying to join online, and they don't know who's who, right? They don't know who's trying to join, so they just said no to everyone who's trying to join online. And then in physical reality, of course, they couldn't as easily block people out of the room, so they basically just scuttled the whole thing, and they didn't really even talk about it.
That's funny. Yeah, I'm always amazed.
What do you do when you're having an anti-porcupine event and you get overrun by porcupines?
Yep, you give up, go home.
Yeah.
And then make plans to move to New York. New York would love to have some more statist bullies.
Yeah, absolutely.
To add to their already admirable flock. So, Massachusetts is very close. They would love to have you.
See, the thing is,
if you're in New Hampshire and you hate freedom, there's someplace else for you to be.
Yeah, Jeremy Kaufman from the Free State Project and Library, lbry.com, he made this point. It's like libertarians existing anywhere outside of New Hampshire is a threat to the. I mean, it's not much of a threat, but the people in the state don't like libertarians because they want to shut the state down, right? Like they want to get rid of them. So if we can migrate as many of those libertarians here to New Hampshire and get the progressive, big government conservative, these people out of New Hampshire and send them to Massachusetts and Florida and New York or whatever, then everybody wins because then the statists get to be in more statist places, and then more libertarians can come here, and everybody gets to be with the people that they're more like, so they have a much better time in life.
Yeah, I'm always I get the best laugh when I hear the grumblings going on, from non-libertarians about how we've already taken over.
Yeah, they're actually saying that
you
stuff.
ain't seen nothing yet, baby.
Right?
You ain't seen nothing yet, baby. Just wait.
And here we are thinking, what are you talking about? We haven't taken over yet. Like we're actually close. We're actually saying like we haven't taken over yet.
Right, but they are literally accusing the Free Staters of dismantling the government.
We're getting there, guys. Yeah. I this is what I'm talking about. Like we're getting there. We're not there yet, though. Like
they think we're there. Though.
I know they do. They really think we're there already, and we're not.
And the Free State.
Wait till they get a load of real freedom.
Yeah, the Free State Project, by the way, at Free State NH, keeps posting all this hate of people saying exactly what you're talking about. It's really entertaining. Check out Chris tomorrow on his show, Freedom Decrypted, at freedomdecrypted.com. You're going to be covering the EU, which we didn't get to
tonight,
and what's going on with the tech crackdowns going on there. So check him out at freedomdecrypted.com, and we'll see you tomorrow at freetalklive.com in the meantime. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide